An Ottoman succession crisis is the 1481 equivalent of a battle royale, where the winner gets a throne and the losers get a shallow grave. And everyone in the room knows it, but nobody's saying it, because saying it out loud is itself a great way to end up in the shallow grave. The Grand Vizier has called an emergency council. 17 officials, all of them experienced, all of them sweating through their silk robes, trying to figure out which prince to back without accidentally volunteering for a public strangulation by bowstring. The Sultan is dead. 2 princes exist. The Janissaries will support whoever reaches Constantinople first, which means the entire Ottoman imperial succession is currently a horse race, where second place is not a prize category. Nobody commits. Nobody defects. 17 men spend 3 hours being aggressively, professionally, lethally ambiguous. You record the minutes with a steady hand. Mostly because showing a tremor is a great way to get fast-tracked for retirement. Permanent retirement. You wake to footsteps in marble corridors before the first call to prayer. The air tastes like cold stone and the particular stillness that comes when an empire holds its breath. Your cardamom coffee sits untouched on the low table beside your sleeping cushions. Steam rises in the half-light filtering through latticed screens. You're already sitting upright when the knock comes. 3 sharp impacts, spaced wrong for courtesy, too urgent, too early. The messenger doesn't wait for permission. He enters with the kind of speed that suggests he's been running through palace corridors for the better part of an hour. His boots track something, moisture, maybe dew from the outer courtyards. His face carries the expression of a man who has just delivered this news 4 times already, and expects to deliver it 6 more before sunrise. The Sultan has died in camp, he says. The words come out in Ottoman Turkish, flat and exhausted. You can hear other footsteps now, echoing through the corridor outside. Whispers starting. The palace is waking to this news in layers, spreading from the innermost chambers outward like blood through silk. When, you say? Last night. Poison is whispered. Of course it is. A sultan dies and within minutes someone decides it was definitely poison, probably Italian, certainly the other faction. This is how these things work. Evidence is optional. Accusation is reflex. Summon the Grand Vizier immediately, you say. The messenger nods once and vanishes back into the corridor. You stand, leaving the coffee where it sits. The cup will cool, you won't be back for it. News of Mehmed's death arrives before dawn. The news is urgent. The whispers are immediate. Your coffee is untouched. This is how succession crises begin. You move through your quarters with the efficiency of someone who has rehearsed this moment without knowing it. Robes, ink case. The small leather folder containing blank letters of state with the imperial seal already impressed in wax. You've been carrying that folder for 3 years, just in case. The wax is still good, you checked 2 weeks ago. The corridor outside is no longer empty. 4 officials stand in a tight cluster near the corner where the passage splits toward the council chambers. They stop talking when you appear. One of them, a treasury clerk whose name you've forgotten, opens his mouth and then closes it again. His hands are shaking slightly. He's trying to decide whether you already know, and if so, what side you're on. You don't give him time to finish the calculation. The Grand Vizier is joining council, you say. Not a question. A statement that implies you were already informed, already moving, already ahead of whatever confused panic is building in the outer halls. They nod. You continue past them without slowing. Behind you, the whispers resume, lower now, faster, the sound of men trying to figure out which direction safety lies. The marble amplifies everything, every footstep, every whispered accusation, every door closing in chambers where princes might or might not be sleeping. Topkapi Palace was not designed for secrecy. It was designed to remind you that the empire is watching, listening, recording. Usually that's a feature. This morning it's a problem. You reach the council chamber before the Grand Vizier does. The torches are already lit. Someone else got here first. Someone whose job involves making sure that no council meeting ever begins in darkness. The smell of burning oil mixes with something sweeter. Rose water, maybe? Someone's attempts to make the room feel less like a place where careers end. The chamber is circular. Cushions arranged in a careful hierarchy that everyone understands and nobody discusses. The Grand Vizier's position at the eastern curve, where he can see everyone and be seen by the door. Your position slightly behind and to his left, close enough to hear everything, far enough to be invisible when necessary. You sit. You arrange your writing materials. Ink pot. 3 quills, because 2 is never enough when the meeting runs long. Fresh parchment. The wax seal, still in its leather case. The call to prayer begins outside, echoing across the golden horn. Allahu Akbar. The city is waking to a day it doesn't yet understand. By the time the sun clears the minarets, every merchant in the bazaar will know the Sultan is dead. By midday, enemy scouts will know. By sunset, the Mamluk Sultan in Cairo will be weighing his options. You have perhaps 8 hours to decide which prince the empire backs. After that, the decision makes itself, in the form of whichever faction moves fastest, kills cleanest, or pays the janissaries better. Other officials begin arriving. They enter quietly, carefully, watching each other the way men watch opponents in negotiations where the stakes include breathing. No one speaks. Someone coughs. Someone else shifts their weight on the cushions, and the silk makes a sound like a whisper in an empty room. 17 men, all of them trying to look calm. All of them calculating which prince to support without being the first person to say a name out loud. The Grand Vizier enters last. The corridor between your quarters and the council chamber is 23 paces long. You know this because you counted them once, during a sleepless night 3 months ago, when the Sultan was still alive, and succession was merely a future problem, rather than an immediate threat to your continued existence. This morning, those 23 paces feel like 23 separate opportunities to say the wrong thing to the wrong person. The whispers have already started. They echo off the marble in patterns that make it impossible to tell who said what first. Someone mentions poison. Someone else mentions Prince Chem. A third voice, too low to identify, murmurs something about the military camp at Gebze where the Sultan died, and how convenient it is that his own physicians were the ones who found the body. You keep walking, eyes forward, expression neutral. The face you wear is the one that suggests you already know more than everyone else, and have already decided not to share. A court official steps out of a side corridor. He's younger than you, better dressed, and currently sweating through robes that probably cost more than your quarterly stipend. His eyes find yours with the desperate precision of a drowning man spotting driftwood. They say poison, he whispers. You stop. Not because you want to, but because not stopping would be suspicious in a different way. In a palace where everyone is watching everyone, sudden disinterest is as revealing as sudden interest. They always say poison, you say quietly. It's true. 3 sultans ago, they said poison. Turned out to be dysentery. 2 sultans before that they said poison. Turned out to be a hunting accident involving a horse with ambitions. Poison is what people whisper when they want drama and don't have evidence. What do we do, he asks. The honest answer is, survive the next 48 hours without picking the wrong side. The diplomatic answer is something about continuity, and careful deliberation and trusting in the wisdom of the Grand Vizier. You choose a third option. We manage carefully, you say. His face suggests this is not the reassurance he was hoping for. You leave him there, still sweating, still calculating. Poison accusations echo through marble corridors. The accusations are whispered. The corridors amplify everything. Your morning has become investigative theater. The palace is designed for light. High ceilings, latticed windows catching the dawn and scattering it in geometric patterns across walls and floors. Usually it feels open, airy, like standing inside a carefully managed piece of heaven. This morning it feels like a trap. Every corridor splits. Every door leads somewhere you haven't checked. Every shadow could be a rival official, a janissary captain, a prince's loyal man, someone collecting information to sell later when knowing who knew what when becomes the difference between promotion and execution. You pass through the courtyard where the fountain runs year-round, fed by aqueducts older than the Ottoman dynasty itself. The water sounds different this morning. Still flowing, still cold, but somehow the sound carries a question it didn't carry yesterday. Two guards stand at the inner gate. They don't move when you pass, but their eyes track you with the focus of men who have just been told to notice everything and report later. One of them has his hand resting near his sword hilt. Not on it, not yet, but close enough that the message is clear. The palace is watching itself. You reach the wing where the senior ministers keep their private offices. Doors closed, no sound from inside. Either everyone is already in the council chamber, or everyone is sitting alone in locked rooms trying to decide what survival looks like today. A servant appears at the end of the corridor carrying a brass tray with coffee cups, fresh cardamom in the air. He sees you and stops, uncertain. The protocol for serving coffee doesn't cover what to do when the empire might be collapsing. He bows slightly and continues past you toward the Grand Vizier's office. Smart man. When in doubt, serve the person most likely to outlive the crisis. You turn the corner toward the Eastern Gallery where the morning council meets. 3 more officials ahead of you, walking in a tight cluster. They're speaking in Persian, the language of poetry and plausible deniability. If someone overhears, you weren't plotting, you were discussing literature. They fall silent when they notice you. One of them nods. You nod back. None of you exchange names. Safer that way. The door to the council chamber stands open. Inside, the Grand Vizier is already seated. His expression is perfectly neutral. The face of a man who has survived 4 sultans and intends to survive a 5th, whichever 5th it turns out to be. You enter. You take your position. You arrange your writing materials for the 2nd time this morning. Outside, the sun clears the horizon. The golden horn catches the light and throws it back in a line of fire across the water. Ships moving in the harbor below. Trade continuing. The city hasn't stopped. But up here, in this palace, in these chambers where 17 men are about to spend 3 hours saying nothing in as many ways as possible, up here, everything has stopped. You're just waiting to see what restarts it. The Grand Vizier Karamani, Mehmed Pasha, doesn't clear his throat before speaking, doesn't tap the cushion, doesn't make eye contact with anyone in particular. He simply begins, in the tone of a man reporting the weather. We must ensure continuity, he says. It's diplomatic language. What it means is, no one in this room knows which prince to support yet, and we must appear decisive while remaining non-committal until someone figures out which way the janissaries are leaning. You watch the faces around the circle. 17 officials, treasury administrators, provincial liaison officers, the head of the palace archives, the keeper of the imperial seal. Men whose entire careers depend on being right about moments exactly like this one. None of them move. Both princes have claims, you say. It's the safest sentence in the Ottoman language, acknowledging reality without endorsing either side, the verbal equivalent of standing perfectly still while everyone else runs past you toward whatever disaster they've chosen. Indeed, the Grand Vizier says, we must be prudent. The ellipsis does more work than the rest of the sentence. That pause is where the dangerous word would go if anyone was brave enough to say it. Bayezid, trem. Poison. Janissaries, war. Any of those words spoken too soon becomes a commitment. Commitments get you killed when you choose wrong. I will draft appropriate letters, you say. The Grand Vizier nods. It's the first gesture he's made that suggests approval. You've just volunteered for the job of writing 17 identical letters to provincial governors that must convey total imperial stability while revealing absolutely nothing about what's actually happening in Constantinople. It's a terrible job. It's also the only job in this room that doesn't require picking a side before you know which side is winning. The Grand Vizier has called an emergency council meeting. This is diplomatic language. What it means is, no one knows which prince to support yet, and we must appear decisive while remaining non-committal. The marble floors will echo with careful ambiguity. The meeting continues. Men speak in turns. Following the hierarchy the room dictates, each statement is a masterpiece of saying nothing while sounding informed. The military situation requires assessment. Provincial governors must be reassured. The Janissaries have not yet declared. That last one gets a reaction. Small, brief. 3 men shift their weight simultaneously, because the Janissaries are the only fact that matters. 8,000 professional soldiers whose loyalty determines whether this succession is smooth or bloody. Right now, they're waiting. Watching. Probably taking bets on which prince reaches Constantinople first. Someone mentions the Venetian ambassador, someone else mentions the Mamluk border. A third voice brings up the treasury reserves, and whether there's enough gold on hand to pay the Janissaries their accession bonus. A tradition that sounds generous until you realize it's protection money by a different name. You write everything down. Not because anyone will read these minutes later, but because holding a quill and appearing busy is an excellent way to avoid being asked direct questions. The torches burn lower. The morning light through the latticed windows shifts angles. Tracking time. Outside, the city is fully awake now. You can hear it distantly. The bazaar opening. The call of water sellers. The creak of cartwheels on cobblestones. Normal sounds. Life continuing in the space between crises. In here, 17 men are trying to look like they're making decisions, while actually making none. The treasury official speaks. He's been quiet until now, which means he's about to say something everyone has been avoiding. The princes must be informed officially. It's the first sentence today that can't be walked back. Once you send official word, you're acknowledging the succession is open. You're inviting both princes to make their claims. You're starting the race. Indeed, the Grand Vizier says again. His favorite word means everything. Commits to nothing. Prince Bayezid is closer, someone observes. Not an endorsement, just geography. Bayezid is in Amasya, governing his province. Maybe 5 days. Hard ride to Constantinople if he leaves immediately, and doesn't stop to gather allies. Prince Cem commands affection, someone else says carefully. Affection. Not loyalty, not military support, just affection. The kind of thing poets write about. Useless in a succession fight, but enough to start one. You add another line to the minutes. Your hand is steady. It's been steady all morning. You've practiced that steadiness for 3 years, in case a morning exactly like this one ever arrived. The Grand Vizier leans forward slightly. It's the most decisive gesture he's made all meeting. The Janissaries must be consulted, he says. Not commanded, not informed, consulted. Because commanding the Janissaries is how you find out whether they're still taking commands, and finding that out wrong gets you a shallow grave outside the city walls. The meeting ends without ending. People simply stop talking. The Grand Vizier rises, everyone else rises half a beat later. You gather your writing materials, inkpot, quills, parchment, covered in carefully neutral sentences that could mean anything depending on who reads them when. Men file out in the same careful silence they filed in with. You're one of the last to leave. The Grand Vizier catches your eye as you pass. He doesn't speak. Doesn't need to. The look says, draft those letters. Make them perfect. Our survival might depend on 17 provincial governors staying calm for the next 72 hours. You nod once. Outside, the corridor is empty. The whispers have moved elsewhere, spreading through the palace like water finding cracks. Somewhere above you, in the prince's former quarters, servants are probably packing belongings. Somewhere below, in the janissary barracks, 8,000 men are sharpening swords and waiting to see who pays them first. You head back toward your quarters. The coffee from this morning will be cold now, undrinkable. You'll make fresh. You'll need it. 17 letters to write. Each one a small masterpiece of reassurance and vagueness. Each one a potential death sentence if you get the tone wrong. The sun is fully up now. The golden horn glitters. Ships moving. Trade flowing. The empire looking stable from a distance. Up close, it's 17 men in a marble room trying not to be the first one to commit to the wrong prince. You have your quill. You have your ink. You have perhaps 48 hours before someone else makes this decision for you. The quill breaks halfway through the 7th letter. The tip splits. Ink spreads across the parchment in a slow blot that ruins 2 lines of carefully neutral phrasing. You set it aside without comment. Reach for another quill from the stand. The stand holds 3 more. After that, you'll need to send someone to fetch replacements from the scribal office, which will take 20 minutes you don't have, and create a witness to the fact that you've been writing urgently enough to exhaust your supply. You dip the fresh quill. Resume. The continuity of imperial governance remains assured under the divine will of the Sultanate. The scribe to your left coughs once, waits, then speaks. The phrasing, he says in Ottoman Turkish. His voice is careful, for imperial continuity. The Sultan's legacy endures, you say without looking up. And the succession is proceeding appropriately. He returns to his own letter. You both know what appropriately means when applied to Ottoman succession. It means nobody has been strangled yet. The Janissaries haven't chosen sides publicly, and we are all pretending the outcome is certain, while privately calculating which prince to support if the situation deteriorates into open conflict. You finish the letter to the governor of Anatolia, sign it, press your seal into warm wax, the wax hisses, you set the letter in the dispatch pile and begin the next one. The governor of Rumelia. The phrasing must be identical. Any variation will be read as a signal. You cannot afford signals. You are drafting letters to 17 provincial governors. The letters must convey strength. The reality is chaos. The ink is running low. The window behind you shows dawn light now, not candlelight. You've been writing for 3 hours. Your hand aches at the base of the thumb. The ache is useful. It keeps you focused on the physical task, rather than the fact that every word you're writing is a calculated gamble on which version of the future will actually occur. Governor of Egypt. Governor of Damascus. Governor of Aleppo. Each letter identical in structure, each one a small lie wrapped in administrative language. The Sultan's death must be presented as a transition, not a crisis. The succession must be described as orderly, despite the fact that 2 princes exist, and neither has yet secured the support that would make their claim unchallengeable. You write the word stability for the 9th time. It looks less convincing each time it appears on the page. The dispatch riders are assembled in the courtyard below. You can hear them through the window. Low voices, the clink of harness fittings, horses shifting weight. They've been waiting since before dawn. Each one will carry multiple letters to different provinces along the same route. The letters must arrive as close to simultaneously as possible. A letter that arrives first suggests panic. A letter that arrives last suggests you forgot about that governor entirely, which is worse. Aleppo, Damascus, Cairo, Bursa, Edirne, Diyarbakir. The names blur together. Your penmanship remains steady. Years of training. A trembling hand is a luxury you cannot afford in a profession where handwriting analysis is a form of intelligence gathering. The scribe finishes his own stack, rises, bows slightly, departs without asking whether you need assistance. He knows better. This is work that cannot be delegated. These letters will be read by men who command armies, control trade routes, and maintain fortresses on borders, where the Mamluk Sultanate and the Safavid territories press against Ottoman authority. Each governor will read between the lines. Each one will make their own assessment of whether the empire is holding together or beginning to fracture. Your job is to make sure the space between the lines contains nothing useful. Letter 14. Governor of Mosul. Your hand cramps. You flex your fingers once, briefly, then continue. The candles have burned low. Someone will need to replace them soon. You make a mental note. Then you make a second mental note to handle it yourself, rather than calling for a servant who will see how many letters you've written and draw conclusions about why 17 separate dispatches needed to go out before noon. The wax pool beside you is nearly empty. You've used half a brick of sealing wax. The room smells of beeswax, smoke, and the faint astringent bite of iron gall ink. Your coffee sits untouched on the far corner of the desk. Cold now. A skin has formed on the surface. 3 more letters. Your quill scratches across parchment. The sound fills the room. Outside, a courier mounts his horse. You hear the creak of leather, the sharp command in Turkish, the clatter of hooves on stone as the first rider departs. He's carrying the letters to the western provinces. He'll ride hard for 2 days, stopping only to change horses at imperial waypoints. The letters he carries will reach Edirne and Bursa before Prince Cem's own messengers can spread whatever version of events he's chosen to present. That is the game. Information moving faster than rumor. Official narrative arriving before speculation. The appearance of control maintained through speed, precision, and a very large number of well-phrased lies that are technically true. You finish letter 17. Governor of Trebizond. Sign it, seal it, add it to the pile. The pile sits on your desk like evidence of something. You're not sure what. Competence, maybe. Or desperation disguised as competence. The line between the two is thinner than most people realize. You stand. Your knees protest. You've been seated for 3 hours without moving. The letters are done. The riders are waiting. The sun is fully up now, bright through the eastern window, warming the air enough that you can smell the rosewater someone used to clean the tiles this morning. You gather the letters. Carry them yourself to the courtyard. The riders see you coming. Straighten. You distribute the letters according to route. Each rider knows his road. You say nothing beyond the destination names. They nod. Mount. Depart in sequence, spaced 3 minutes apart, so they don't look like a panicked exodus from the palace. The last rider disappears through the gate. You return to your quarters. The desk is scattered with broken quills, hardened wax strips, and 1 cold cup of coffee you will not drink. The window is still open. The breeze carries the sound of the city waking. Vendors, carts, the morning call to prayer beginning in the distance. 17 letters. 17 governors who will read them, assess them, and decide whether the Ottoman Empire is still the empire they swore loyalty to, or whether it's time to start hedging their bets. You close the window. The sound fades, your fingers smell of ink and wax. The scent will linger for hours, a private reminder of work that must appear effortless. You flex your hand once more. The cramping eases slightly. Outside, the palace is moving into its daytime rhythms. Functionaries arriving, petitioners gathering at the outer gates, the machinery of governance continuing as though nothing has changed. You wash your hands in the brass basin by the door. The water is cold. It strips away the ink stains but not the fatigue. You dry your hands on linen that someone replaced while you were writing. The old cloth, stained with yesterday's ink, has been removed. Every trace of disorder erased. The palace consumes evidence of strain as quickly as it's produced. The military advisor arrives during afternoon prayers, which tells you two things. The report couldn't wait, and he's nervous enough to violate protocol. You receive him in the smaller audience chamber, the one without windows. The lack of windows is deliberate. Some conversations benefit from the certainty that no one outside the room can hear them. He bows. You gesture for him to speak. He does not sit. That tells you the third thing. This is not good news. Mamluk scouts, he says in Ottoman Turkish. His voice is steady but his hands aren't. At the border. You wait. Let the silence do its work, he continues. Strength assessment, you say. Probing only. He shifts weight slightly, not amassing. Reconnaissance. Double the patrols, you say. Maintain appearance of strength. He bows again, sharper this time. Relief. He leaves quickly, grateful the conversation ended before it could become more complicated. You remain in the empty chamber. The walls are bare plaster, painted white, decorated only with geometric tilework at shoulder height. No portraits. No battle standards. Nothing that suggests this room is used for anything, except conversations that leave no physical record beyond the memories of the people who were present. The Mamluk scouts are expected. Sultan Kate Bey runs the most efficient intelligence network in the eastern Mediterranean. He knew Mehmed was dead before most of the palace staff did. The question isn't whether the Mamluks are watching. They are always watching. The question is what they'll do with what they see. The border between Ottoman Anatolia and Mamluk Syria is a line drawn in sand, enforced by fortresses, and maintained by a very careful balance of mutual deterrence. The Mamluks don't invade because the Ottomans would respond with overwhelming force. The Ottomans don't provoke because the Mamluks control the Hajj routes, and a war in that region would be politically disastrous. Everyone stays in their lane because everyone benefits from stability. Succession crises disrupt stability. You cross the chamber. The tile floor is cool under your boots. Summer is coming, but the palace interior holds the last of the spring chill, particularly in rooms like this one where sunlight never reaches. You stop at the far wall. Run your hand along the plaster, smooth, unmarked, the kind of surface that gives nothing away. Enemy scouts are probing the Mamluk border. This is expected. This is also inconvenient. Your dispatch riders are exhausted. The Empire must appear invincible while internally panicking. The patrols will be doubled. The garrison commanders along the Syrian frontier will receive orders to increase visibility. More banners, more cavalry drills, more signal fires at night. The performance of strength. It costs almost nothing, and buys you time. Time for Prince Bayezid to reach Constantinople. Time for the Janissaries to declare their support. Time for the succession to resolve itself before external enemies start testing whether the empire is distracted enough to be vulnerable. The Mamluks aren't the only ones watching. The Venetians have agents in every port city. The Hungarians are monitoring troop movements along the Danube frontier. Uzun Hasan's successors in Persia are calculating whether Ottoman Anatolia is suddenly open to pressure from the east. Every regional power within 1,000 miles is doing the same math. Dead sultan plus uncertain succession equals possible opportunity. Your job is to make the math come out wrong. To make every external observer conclude that the Ottoman Empire remains too strong, too organized, and too dangerous to test. Even if the truth is that half the Imperial Council is sleepless, the Janissaries haven't committed to either prince, and you're currently holding the empire together with 17 identical letters and a very convincing performance of calm. You return to the main corridor. A servant passes carrying fresh candles. Bows without making eye contact. You continue walking. The palace is a grid of corridors, courtyards, and chambers, designed to be defensible, monitored, and controlled. Every sightline is calculated. Every doorway is positioned so that guards can see who's coming. The architecture is a security system built in stone and tile. Right now, that security system is working overtime. Every gate is manned. Every watch is doubled. Every messenger entering or leaving the palace is noted, their destination recorded, their contents, if possible, discreetly observed. The palace is a fortress. It is also a trap. Once you're inside, leaving without permission is a statement. Staying without purpose is suspicious. Everyone is watching everyone else, trying to determine who knows what, and whether their own position is secure. You reach the map room, unlock the door yourself. Step inside. Close it behind you. The map table dominates the space, carved walnut frame surface covered in vellum marked with ink lines showing borders, roads, cities, fortresses. The Ottoman Empire at its peak, Mehmed's Empire, stretching from the Danube to the Euphrates, from the Aegean to the Black Sea. Every inch of it maintained through military strength, administrative competence, and the constant, exhausting work of making sure that everyone who might challenge you believes the cost would be too high. You trace the Syrian border with one finger. The line runs through mountains, deserts, and river valleys. The fortresses are marked in red ink: Aleppo, Damascus. The garrison strengths are written in small script beside each name, numbers that suddenly matter more than they did a week ago. Doubling the patrols means pulling men from reserve rotations. It means increased costs. It means showing the garrison commanders that you're worried enough to act, but not so worried that you've lost control. The balance is precise. Too little response suggests weakness. Too much suggests panic. You update the duty rosters in your mind. Make the calculations. The numbers work. Barely. The empire has enough manpower to maintain the appearance of strength on the Syrian frontier, while still holding adequate reserves for the Danube frontier, the Aegean coast, and the internal security requirements of Constantinople itself. The map doesn't show the political borders. Those are invisible, more dangerous. The line between Prince Bayezid's supporters and Prince Chem's supporters runs through families, military units, and provincial administrations. That line is still being drawn. Every conversation, every letter, every public statement is a mark on the invisible map. You're trying to shape the final borders before the fighting starts. If the Janissaries declare for Bayezid, the invisible map solidifies in his favor. If they hesitate, or worse, if they split, half for Bayezid, half for Chem, then the invisible map fractures into territories, and the empire gets a civil war it cannot afford. The door remains closed. You remain alone with the map, and the growing certainty that the next 48 hours will determine whether the Ottoman Empire continues as a unified state, or begins the slow, violent process of breaking itself apart from the inside. You lock the map room behind you, return to the corridor. The afternoon light through the high windows has shifted, later than you thought. The palace is preparing for evening prayers. The call will sound soon. You'll attend. Everyone will attend. The Grand Vizier, the Janissary Aga, the council members, the court officials, all of them gathered in public, performing unity while privately calculating their positions. The performance is exhausting. It's also necessary. Empires don't survive on strength alone, they survive on the belief in strength. As long as everyone continues to act as though the empire is stable, the empire remains stable. The moment someone breaks the performance, the cracks become visible. You will not be the one who breaks it. The corridor smells of lamp oil, and the faint sweetness of fruit from the kitchens. Somewhere below, someone is arguing in Greek. A servant, probably, haggling over supplies. The sound is distant, ordinary, a reminder that underneath the crisis the palace continues to function. Meals are prepared, floors are swept. The rhythm of maintenance continues, regardless of which prince will eventually sit on the throne. The council chamber at dusk is a study in calculated silence. 15 men seated on cushions arranged in a precise semicircle, each position calibrated to rank, influence, and the fragile question of who can be trusted to sit next to whom. The torches are lit early tonight. The windows face west and the dying sun is the wrong kind of light. Too golden, too soft, the kind that makes exhaustion visible on faces that need to appear rested. You sit at the curve of the semicircle, not the center. The center is reserved for the Grand Vizier Karamani Mehmed Pasha, whose measured tones and careful pauses have become the sound of the empire holding its breath. To his right, the Janissary Aga, battle-scarred, enormous, and currently engaged in the most aggressive silence you have ever witnessed. The Aga has not spoken once since the council assembled. He arrived precisely on time, took his position, and settled into a stillness that is somehow more commanding than speech. His presence is a question everyone is trying to answer without asking it directly. 8,000 swords. That's what his silence represents. 8,000 Janissaries currently stationed in and around Constantinople, waiting for their commander to indicate which prince has earned their support. The Grand Vizier clears his throat. Not from necessity, from diplomacy. The sound is a signal that he's about to navigate something delicate. The Janissaries must be consulted, he says carefully in Ottoman Turkish, each word placed like a stone in a path across uncertain ground. You meet his gaze. Hold it. Their loyalty determines everything, you say. The Janissary Aga remains motionless, doesn't shift weight, doesn't acknowledge the statement. His hands rest on his knees, visible, empty, positioned in a way that suggests he's comfortable enough not to need his sword, but aware enough to reach it quickly if circumstances change. Indeed, the Grand Vizier says. You wait. The silence extends, becomes architectural. The other council members sit frozen in various states of performed calm. No one is willing to break the moment. Breaking it would require stating something explicit about the succession, and stating something explicit would require taking a position, and taking a position before the Janissary Aga declares his would be spectacularly stupid. The Aga's head tilts, left, slightly, maybe 3 degrees. The room exhales collectively without making a sound. You've been studying this man's body language for 6 days. The head tilt is not aggression, it's evaluation. He's considering something, weighing it. The angle of the tilt suggests he's listening to an argument he hasn't fully accepted, but hasn't rejected either. It's the physical equivalent of continue. The Grand Vizier recognizes it too. His shoulders drop maybe a centimeter, not relief, just the absence of immediate threat. The question of timing, the Vizier says, remains delicate. The Agha's hand moves, palm down, flat, rests against his knee with deliberate pressure. You translate internally, not yet. Or possibly, I'm not the one who will decide your timing. The gesture is ambiguous enough to mean both. The council meeting continues in this fashion for another hour. Topics are raised, discussed in careful abstractions and tabled for further consideration. Supply chain logistics. Garrison rotations, the timing of the next Friday prayers and who will lead them. Every subject is a proxy for the real question, which is, what happens when Prince Bayezid arrives in Constantinople and discovers that his younger brother Prince Cem has decided not to concede gracefully? The answer is civil war. Everyone knows this, no one says it. The Janissaries are the counterweight. Whichever prince they support becomes sultan. The other becomes a problem that requires solving, and Ottoman solutions to dynastic problems are historically unambiguous. The Janissaries know this. They also know their support is worth negotiating over. The winning prince will owe them. Debts to the Janissary Corps have a way of becoming permanent fixtures of imperial policy. The Aga hasn't named his price yet. That's what the silence means. He's waiting to see what both princes offer before committing to either. You watch him across the chamber. His face is weathered, scarred along the left cheekbone from some battle you don't know the details of. His beard is trimmed military short. His robes are spotless but not ornate. Functional, expensive in a way that doesn't announce itself. A man who commands respect through presence rather than decoration. He's also the only person in this room who could end the succession crisis in 5 minutes by standing up and declaring for Bayezid. He hasn't. Which means he's either still deciding or he's already decided and is waiting for the strategically optimal moment to announce it. You cannot tell which. That is the problem. The Grand Vizier concludes the meeting with the formal phrases that mean, "We have achieved nothing but at least we achieved it together." The council members rise. Bow, file out in order of rank. The Janissary Aga leaves third, after the Vizier and the Chief Treasurer. His departure is unhurried. He does not look back. You remain seated until the chamber empties. Then you stand, your knees protest again. You've been sitting for 2 hours on a cushion that stopped being comfortable 90 minutes ago. The torches gutter slightly in the evening breeze from the windows. The light shifts across the empty cushions, the abandoned teacups, the small brass tray where someone left a plate of dates that no one touched, because eating during a negotiation suggests you're comfortable enough to be distracted by food. 8,000 swords. One man's decision. The fate of an empire balanced on whether a battle-scarred Janissary commander decides that Prince Bayezid is a safer bet than Prince Cem, or whether he decides to extract maximum concessions by making both princes sweat before committing. You cross the chamber, stop at the window, look down into the courtyard below. The Janissaries are drilling. You can hear them. Sharp commands in Turkish, the rhythmic stomp of boots on stone, the clash of practice weapons. They drill every evening. The consistency is intentional. A message to everyone watching. We are ready, we are disciplined, we are waiting. The question is what they're waiting for. You close the shutters. The sound fades, but doesn't disappear. It continues in the background of everything, a low percussion that underlies every conversation in the palace. The sound of 8,000 men who could end this crisis or start a war, depending on which way their commander points them. The chamber is darker now with the shutters closed. Just torchlight, flickering, uncertain. You leave the torches burning, someone else will extinguish them. You have other work. The corridor outside is empty, your footsteps echo on marble. The palace is settling into evening routines. Servants lighting lamps, guards changing shifts. The kitchen staff preparing the night meal for those senior enough to eat in the palace rather than returning to their own quarters in the city. You return to your room, lock the door, sit at the desk where 17 letters were written this morning. The desk is clean now. Someone tidied it while you were in the council meeting. The broken quills are gone. The wax drips have been scraped away. A fresh pot of ink sits ready. New quills in the stand. The coffee cup has been removed. You don't pour new coffee. You sit in the chair and stare at the blank parchment, and think about what happens if the Janissary Aga decides to stay silent until both princes are in Constantinople, until the choice becomes unavoidable and immediate, until silence is no longer an option, and someone, somewhere in this empire, makes the first move that everyone else will interpret as permission to start the violence. The parchment remains blank, the ink waits. The evening call to prayer sounds from the nearest mosque, then spreads across the city in overlapping waves of sound. You don't move. You sit in the silence between the calls, and listen to the Janissaries drilling in the courtyard below, and wonder which version of the future is already unfolding, locked in place by decisions that haven't been announced yet, but have already been made. The sound of boots on stone continues. The rhythm is precise, unvarying. A heartbeat that belongs to 8,000 men who answer to one commander. You press your palms flat against the desk surface. The wood is cool. solid, a small point of certainty in a palace where everything else is negotiable. The Janissary Aga arrives at dawn for the council meeting. He does not announce himself. The door opens, and he is present, battle-scarred and enormous, occupying the space near the eastern lattice. 8,000 swords follow his judgment. His judgment is communicated primarily through the angle of his head and the position of his hand relative to his sword hilt. You have been studying this man's neck muscles for a week. The council chamber fills slowly. The Grand Vizier enters last, as protocol demands, carrying scrolls he will not need to reference. The torches are lit, though dawn light comes through the lattices. Someone decided visibility was more important than saving oil. That someone was correct. The Aga has not looked at anyone directly. His gaze holds steady on the far wall, above the calligraphy panels. Not dismissive, not engaged. Waiting. The Janissary's counsel is valued, you say carefully in Ottoman Turkish. The Aga's head tilts slightly left. The Grand Vizier clears his throat once. We appreciate their perspective. The Aga nods once. Deliberate, measured, not agreement, acknowledgement. You interpret, conditional approval. He is listening. He has not decided. The decision will come later, when the terms are clearer, and the payments are confirmed in writing. The silence that follows is not empty. It is full of calculations happening simultaneously in 17 different minds, each man trying to determine what the Aga's tilt means, and whether they are interpreting it correctly, or signing their own execution orders through optimistic misreading. The Janissary Aga speaks rarely during council meetings. This makes his silence strategic. It also makes everyone extraordinarily nervous. You have learned to interpret the angle of his head as either approval or veiled threat. The learning curve involved several sleepless nights. The Grand Vizier unfurls a scroll he does not read from. The matter of continuity. The core has served the empire faithfully. The Aga's hand rests on his belt, not his sword hilt. Belt. The distinction matters. Belt means he is present as counsel. Sword hilt means he is present as threat. You have learned this vocabulary through observation, and one very instructive incident involving a treasury official who spoke too quickly about delayed payments. Another counselor ventures. Prince Bayezid approaches from the east. His claim is, the Aga's gaze shifts, not to the speaker, to you. You meet it. Hold. Do not look away. Do not speak. The room is holding its breath, which is remarkable given how many people are currently not breathing on purpose. The Aga's hand moves from his belt to the table, palm down, flat, a statement delivered in wood grain and calluses. You interpret, he will wait for terms. He is not declaring for anyone yet. The core will move when the payments are confirmed, and the legitimacy is clear. Until then, 8,000 swords remain exactly where they are, neither threat nor support, just a fact everyone in this room must account for. The meeting continues in careful neutrality. The Grand Vizier speaks of provisions, routes, protocol. He does not mention succession directly. No one does. The Aga contributes nothing verbally. His presence is contribution enough. When the council disperses, he is the first to leave. No farewell, no acknowledgement. The door closes behind him with the sound of iron fittings against oak. The Grand Vizier approaches your position near the western lattice. His face is composed. His hands are not. His terms will be specific. They always are. The treasury is prepared. You are not certain this is true. You are certain it is the only acceptable answer. The Vizier nods once, a motion borrowed from the Aga's vocabulary. Then we proceed carefully. We do. The council chamber empties. The morning light shifts across the marble floors, tracking time in geometry. Your coffee has gone cold during the meeting. You drink it anyway. Waste is not an option when 17 men are calculating whether they will be alive to drink coffee tomorrow. The air smells of extinguished torches and old parchment. Someone has been burning expensive sandalwood incense in the antechamber. The scent drifts through the lattice, mixing with sweat and tension, and the particular smell of men making decisions they hope will not kill them. The Janissaries will decide this succession, not the Grand Vizier, not the princes, not you. 8,000 men, whose loyalty is measured in pay received, not blood claims or divine right or any other convenient fiction empires, tell themselves about legitimacy. You are drafting terms they will accept. This is not negotiation, this is survival logistics. The difference is that negotiation implies both parties have alternatives. The Grand Vizier requests a private audience. Requests. The word is formal. The urgency beneath it is not. You meet him in the smaller council room, the one without latticed windows. No observers. No witnesses. The kind of room where careers end or survive based on sentences spoken quietly and never repeated. He closes the door himself. Does not wait for an attendant. That tells you everything about the weight of what comes next. We have served together long, he says quietly in Ottoman Turkish. Through 3 campaigns. The wrong choice means death. You hold his gaze. Then we choose carefully. Both princes have merit. Bayezid has the Janissaries, conditional interest. Kem has the western provinces, sympathy. Sympathy does not hold Constantinople. No. The vizier's hands rest flat on the table between you. Not fidgeting, deliberate stillness, but a civil war loses it. You let the silence work. He came here to say something specific. Pushing him toward it faster will only make him cautious. The Grand Vizier's survival instinct is finely tuned. You respect it. You also need him to commit, before his caution becomes paralysis. The Janissaries will declare for whoever pays them first, and convincingly, he says finally. The treasury has the funds. For one prince. Yes. His expression does not change. The calculation behind his eyes is visible anyway. If we choose incorrectly, we die. You already said that. I wanted to confirm you understood. I do. You lean forward slightly. Not aggression. Emphasis. We commit to Bayezid, quietly. Through the treasury. The Janissaries declare for him before Sem realizes payments are moving. The succession is over before the civil war starts. And if Cem reaches Constantinople first? He won't. The roads are watched. The dispatch riders are ours. His movements reach us before they reach him. The vizier's hands lift from the table. Fold. A decision made and accepted and already being buried under the next calculation. Then we proceed. Prudently. Prudently. He stands. The meeting is over. No formal closing. No record. This conversation will not appear in any council minutes because officially it never happened. 2 men in a windowless room, committing to a prince and hoping they have chosen the winning side before the losing side, realizes they were ever a threat. The door opens, closes. You are alone again. Your hands are steady. They have been steady through every meeting today. Steady hands in Ottoman court politics are survival currency. Tremors are noticed. Noticed is investigated. Investigated is dead. The Grand Vizier has committed. That means you are no longer managing this crisis alone. It also means if you have chosen incorrectly, you will die together. There is something almost comforting about shared catastrophic risk. Not comfort exactly. Camaraderie. Maybe. The kind formed between people who know exactly how close they are to execution and proceed anyway because stopping is not an option. You leave the smaller council room. The corridor outside is empty. Afternoon prayers have emptied the administrative wing. Somewhere in this palace, the Janissary Aga is waiting for terms to arrive in writing. Somewhere beyond the palace walls, Prince Bayezid rides toward a throne he does not yet know is his. Somewhere further west, Prince Cem is making calculations about routes and loyalty and timing that will all be rendered irrelevant by decisions you are making right now, in his absence, without his knowledge. Your quarters are cooler than the council room. The stone walls hold morning cold well into afternoon. Your coffee is waiting. Still hot. Someone refreshed it while you were meeting with the vizier. Small comforts during succession crises. The palace continues its functions even as the empire hangs in careful balance. You drink. The cardamom is fresh. The warmth settles. Not peace. Just a brief pause before the next decision point arrives, and you have to prove, again, that you chose correctly. The Ottoman bureaucracy runs on coffee, bribes and threats, delivered through intermediaries. You have just deployed 2 of those 3. The third waits in reserve, should the Janissary Aga's head tilt in a direction that requires more explicit persuasion. The empire has a protocol for everything, including how to threaten military commanders without technically threatening them at all. The Venetian ambassador is announced during the afternoon lull. You are drafting treasury orders. The announcement interrupts a sentence about payment schedules that will determine whether 8,000 men declare for Bayezid or remain dangerously neutral. The ambassador enters carrying gifts. Murano glass, wrapped in silk, beautiful. The intelligence gathering begins before he speaks. His bow is precise. European formality translated into Ottoman court language. Respectful without being subordinate. The balance is calculated. Everything about this man is calculated. Venice has been gathering intelligence since before your grandfather learned to read. The ambassador represents 4 centuries of institutional expertise in extracting information while appearing sympathetic. You are being robbed by a professional. It is almost impressive. Such difficult times, he says smoothly in Ottoman Turkish. His accent is perfect, no trace of Italian inflection. He has been in Constantinople long enough to sound native. The empire endures. Of course. He sets the Murano glass on the table between you, red and gold. Venetian craftsmanship at its finest. These gifts express our concern. You unwrap one piece, hold it to the light. The glass catches the lattice pattern from the window, fragmenting afternoon sun into geometric color. Your friendship is valued. The ambassador smiles. Not warmth. Recognition. 2 people playing the same game, acknowledging each other's competence. And the succession proceeds appropriately. Appropriately. He repeats the word, like he is tasting it. Testing its edges. The European courts are attentive. Stability in the East affects trade. Venice has interests. Venice always has interests. We do. His smile widens slightly, which is why we hope the transition is smooth. You set the glass down carefully. Not abrupt. Controlled. The Sultan is dead 3 days. The princes are informed. The council meets daily. The Janissaries are consulted. The succession will be resolved according to tradition and the empire's needs. Every sentence in that paragraph contains 0 useful information. The ambassador knows this. You know he knows. He came here to probe for cracks in the official position. You are giving him nothing but carefully polished surfaces. The Janissaries, he says thoughtfully, their loyalty is legendary. It is. And their counsel, I imagine, is being sought extensively. All appropriate parties are consulted. You gesture to the Murano glass. Please convey our gratitude to the Doge. Venice's concern is noted and appreciated. The ambassador recognizes the dismissal for what it is. Polite. Absolute. The meeting is over. He has gathered what intelligence he came for. which is to say he has confirmed that you are giving him nothing, which tells him that something significant is happening that you are working to conceal. He bows. You do not rise. Protocol. He leaves with the same measured grace he entered with. The Murano glass remains on the table. The Venetian ambassador has brought Murano glass gifts. The gifts are beautiful. The intelligence gathering is subtle. You are accepting presents while protecting state secrets. The diplomatic dance is exhausting. You return to the Treasury orders. The sentence you were drafting before the interruption is still incomplete. Payment schedules. Janissary loyalty. The mechanics of securing a succession before anyone realizes it is already secured. The Venetian ambassador will write a report tonight. It will reach Venice in 2 weeks. The Doge will read it and make decisions about trade routes and military positioning based on information the ambassador extracted from what you did not say. You are managing a succession crisis while conducting intelligence defense against a city-state that has been doing this longer than the Ottoman Empire has existed. The multitasking is remarkable, also mandatory. The afternoon light shifts. The glass catches it again, scattering red and gold across the parchment. The Treasury orders are nearly complete. The Janissaries will receive terms in writing by sunset. The Grand Vizier has committed. The Venetian ambassador has been handled. You are 3 days into a succession crisis. No one has died yet. Measured against Ottoman historical precedent, this is extraordinary. Measured against the next 48 hours, this is meaningless. The crisis will resolve, or it will explode. The difference comes down to whether the payments reach the Janissaries before Prince Cem reaches Constantinople. You finish the sentence. Sign the order. The ink is still wet when the attendant arrives to carry it to the Treasury. Speed matters. Every hour, the Janissaries wait without terms. Is an hour they might be approached by someone else, offering different terms. The palazzo continues its rhythms. Prayers, councils, whispers in corridors, men making survival calculations in windowless rooms. The empire enduring while its succession hangs in the balance of payments not yet delivered, and declarations not yet made. The Murano glass sits on the table. You leave it there. Evening prayer calls from the nearest minaret. The sound rolls across marble and tile, measuring time in devotion. You are not praying. You are calculating whether you have secured enough loyalty to survive the week. Midnight in the working chamber, the coffee pot sits on brass, still warm. You've been at this desk for 6 hours. 3 maps spread across the table, each one showing the empire from a different administrative angle. Provincial boundaries. Military garrison positions. Trade route control points. The empire is not one shape. It's 17 overlapping systems of loyalty, and right now every single one of them is waiting to see which direction to lean. The Grand Vizier left 2 hours ago. The Janissary Aga never appeared, which tells you more than a spoken conversation would have. 8,000 swords are waiting for a signal you haven't figured out how to send yet. Your assistant works at the smaller table near the latticed window. He's copying draft letters in his precise hand, the kind of penmanship that makes chancellors weep with professional joy. Every few minutes he pauses, waiting for you to finish the next calculation. The calculations are complex, he says quietly in Ottoman Turkish. Loyalty has patterns, you say. He looks up. What pattern? I am discovering it. You return to the garrison map. Edirne garrison, 600 men, loyal to their pay schedule. Bursa garrison, 800 men, loyal to the local governor, who is loyal to whoever controls the treasury. Ankara garrison, 400 men, loyal to... You stop. Loyal to their pay schedule. The phrase keeps appearing in your notes. Not loyal to bloodlines. Not loyal to the memory of Mehmed the Conqueror. Loyal to their pay schedule. which means loyal to whoever signs the treasury orders, which means loyal to whoever controls the imperial seal in the next 48 hours. You pull the third map closer. Treasury disbursement routes. The payments go out monthly. The next payment cycle starts in 11 days. If Prince Bayezid reaches Constantinople and secures the seal before that cycle begins, every garrison in the empire gets paid on time by the legitimate heir. If Prince Cem reaches the city first and the succession remains contested, the payments stop, while the legal questions get resolved. A soldier who hasn't been paid in 2 months doesn't care about legal questions, he cares about bread. You're drafting the insight when the pattern completes itself. The Janissaries, 8,000 professional soldiers stationed in Constantinople itself, their payment cycle is weekly, not monthly. Next payment, 4 days from now. Prince Bayezid is 6 days away. Prince Cem is 8 days away. Maybe 9, if the western roads are as bad as the last report suggested. 4 days. If the Treasury issues their payment on schedule, if you can convince the acting treasurer to release the funds without waiting for the succession to resolve, the Janissaries get paid before either prince arrives. They get paid by the imperial bureaucracy that serves the empire itself, not by a prince trying to buy their loyalty. It changes the entire equation. They won't be choosing between two claimants. They'll be defending the system that just proved it works regardless of who sits on the throne. You write faster now. The letter to the treasurer needs to sound like routine administrative continuity, not a strategic masterstroke. Maintaining imperial functions during the transition period. Ensuring military readiness. Demonstrating the strength of Ottoman institutions. The words are boring, deliberately boring. The kind of phrasing that makes a treasurer think he's just doing his job rather than picking the winning side in a succession crisis. Your assistant finishes his current letter and looks up. You slide the treasury draft across the table. He reads it twice, his expression unchanging. Then he sets it down carefully. This will secure their loyalty, he says. Before Prince Cem even knows he needed to, you say. He returns to his copying. You return to the maps. The cardamom coffee has gone cold, but your hands are steady. Somewhere in this palace, the Grand Vizier is sleeping, or pretending to sleep, while he runs his own calculations about which prince to support. Somewhere in the barracks district, the Janissary Aga is doing whatever it is that battle-scarred giants do at midnight, when 8,000 swords wait for their orders. You are beating both of them to the solution, not with force, not with speeches. With a boring treasury authorization that will reach the right desk by morning and make the entire military question irrelevant by lunchtime. The lamp flickers. You trim the wick and continue writing. 3 more letters before dawn. Then the morning council, where you will sit quietly while everyone else debates strategy, and nobody will know that you've already won. The ink on the garrison map has smudged where your palm rested. You blot it carefully, preserving the roots and numbers underneath. Outside, the city sleeps under its own weight of waiting. A dog barks 3 streets away. The night watch calls the hour from the eastern tower. Your breath fogs slightly in the cooling air. Winter is 6 weeks off, but the stone walls already hold the memory of it. You pull your outer robe closer and reach for the next blank sheet. The provincial governors need their morning dispatches. 17 letters, each one calibrated to that governor's specific anxiety, each one giving nothing away while promising everything will hold. The treasury draft goes out with the dawn dispatch. You watch the messenger leave through the eastern gate, the sealed letter in his courier pouch looking exactly as boring as it needs to look. Now you wait. The pattern is complete in your mind now. You've spent 3 days trying to figure out which prince the military would follow, when the real question was simpler. What do soldiers actually follow? Not blood claims. Not speeches about legitimacy. They follow the system that feeds them on schedule. You have discovered the pattern in Janissary loyalty. They follow legitimacy, but measure it in pay received, not blood claims. This changes everything. You are drafting treasury orders. Prince Chem will never know you secured 8,000 swords before he could. The morning council meets in 2 hours. You need secondary orders ready before then. Confirmation letters to every regional paymaster, instructions to maintain disbursement schedules regardless of political developments, reminders that imperial administration continues through transitions. Your assistant arrives as the sun clears the eastern wall. He's brought fresh coffee and the overnight reports from the border provinces. You scan them while he sets up the writing table. Prince Bayezid made good time yesterday. 5 days out now, maybe 4.5 if he pushes hard. Prince Chem's position remains unchanged. 8 days minimum, assuming he's even received word yet. The mathematics are working in your favor. Draft treasury orders for immediate Janissary salary payments, you say urgently in Ottoman Turkish. All units, he asks. Every soldier. Full payment immediately. He pauses, stylus hovering over the wax tablet where he takes initial notes. This will secure their loyalty. Before Prince Tem can, you say. He writes. You return to the regional reports. The provincial governors are waiting for signals from Constantinople. Every letter you've sent them so far has been carefully neutral. Acknowledging the Sultan's death, expressing confidence in the succession process, providing zero information about which prince to support. The goal was to keep them frozen in place while the center resolved itself. Now the center is resolving itself. The Janissaries will be paid tomorrow. The garrison troops will be paid on schedule next week. By the time any governor decides to make a move, there won't be anything to move toward. The succession will already have a clear winner, and that winner won't be determined by speeches or blood claims, but by the boring administrative machinery of imperial government that kept working while everyone else panicked. You're writing the confirmation letter to the Edini paymaster when the Grand Vizier's secretary appears at your door. The council is convening early. The Janissary Aga has requested to address the members before the regular session begins. Your hand doesn't shake as you seal the letter. The Aga wouldn't request an early session unless he had something definitive to say. Either he's received word about troop movements that change the strategic picture, or he's about to declare which prince the corps will support. Either way, your treasury order is already in motion. If he declares for Bayezid, you've just made that declaration easier, by proving the imperial administration backs the same choice. If he declares for Sem, you've just created a financial incentive for the Janissaries to reconsider their position before it hardens into something irreversible. The mathematics still favor you. You gather your notes and follow the secretary through the marble corridors. Dawn light angles through the latticed windows, casting geometric shadows that shift as you walk. Other officials are converging on the council chamber from different directions. Nobody speaks. Everyone is calculating the same equations with different variables. The chamber is already half full when you arrive. The Grand Vizier stands near the window, his expression neutral in the way that means he's screaming internally. The Venetian ambassador is not present, which means this session is for Ottoman officials only, the kind of meeting where decisions get made rather than explained. The Janissary Aga enters last. He doesn't sit. He stands at the head of the table, his physical presence making the room feel smaller. His battle-scarred face shows nothing. His hands rest at his sides, nowhere near his sword hilt. That's the first signal. When the Aga keeps his hands visible and away from weapons, he's not delivering a threat. He's delivering information that he expects you to accept without forcing him to make it a threat. The Grand Vizier clears his throat. The Aga has matters to address before we begin formal session. Everyone waits. The pattern you discovered 3 hours ago is about to become operational reality. You've secured the payment. Now you're about to find out whether the Aga already knew what you just figured out. or whether you've just changed his calculus without him realizing it yet. The morning light holds steady through the windows. Your coffee is getting cold. The empire is about to take a shape that nobody in this room fully controls, but that you helped design with a series of extremely boring letters about treasury disbursement schedules. The air in the chamber smells of lamp oil and old parchment. Someone's sleeve brushes against the table edge as they lean forward. The Aga's breathing is audible in the silence. Steady, unhurried, the rhythm of a man who has decided something and will not be moved from it. The Aga speaks 6 words total. The payment schedule has been confirmed. Then he tilts his head slightly to the left. You've been watching this man for 9 days now. You've attended 7 council sessions, where he said nothing, but communicated everything through physical positioning. You have become fluent in interpreting the Janissary Aga's head angles. Slight left tilt means conditional approval. Straightforward means veiled threat. The interpretation system is entirely in your exhausted mind. The left tilt means the Treasury order reached him before this council session, he's verified it's legitimate, and he's signaling provisional acceptance of whatever authority issued it. He's not declaring for a prince yet, he's declaring for the system that just proved it functions without a sultan. The Grand Vizier catches it too. His shoulders drop a fraction of an inch. The only visible sign of relief he'll permit himself in a room full of people who are watching for exactly that kind of tell. The continuity of imperial administration serves the empire, the Vizier says carefully. His voice has that measured quality, the one where every syllable is calibrated for survival. The military's wisdom guides us. The Aga tilts his head left again. Same angle. Confirmation, not contradiction. You're running the memory of another conversation now. 3 days ago, in this same chamber, you'd been explaining the communication protocols with provincial governors. You'd said carefully, the military's wisdom guides us. The Aga had tilted his head left. Conditional approval of the phrasing. The Grand Vizier had added, their experience is invaluable. The Aga had nodded forward once. Straight ahead, no tilt. That was the dangerous signal. Proceed but carefully. Don't assume approval means agreement. Don't mistake tolerance for alliance. You'd understood then. You understand now. The Aga is not picking sides in a succession dispute. He's establishing that the Janissary Corps answers to imperial stability, and imperial stability is measured in payment schedules and functional bureaucracy, not in which prince has the better legal argument. It's the most dangerous kind of loyalty. It's conditional on competence. The council session proceeds through its formal agenda. Letters from provincial governors. Reports from border garrisons. Updates on Prince Bayezid's position. 4 days out now, maybe 3.5 if he rode through the night. Prince Kem's position remains unclear, which is itself information. If Kem were moving decisively, you'd know. The Aga doesn't speak again. He doesn't need to. His presence in the chamber is the message. 8,000 swords are waiting to see whether the imperial administration can maintain basic functions during a succession crisis. You just proved it can. That proof bought you time and space that neither prince can easily override. Near the end of the session, a secretary brings in the confirmation from the Treasury. The Janissary payment has been processed. Disbursement begins this afternoon. Every soldier will be paid in full by sunset tomorrow. The Aga's expression doesn't change, but his right hand, which had been resting on the table, moves to his side, away from any gesture that could be interpreted as aggressive. It's the physical equivalent of a sentence that doesn't need to be spoken. Tied. You have fulfilled your obligation. I acknowledge it, Snove. The session ends. Officials disperse through different corridors, each one retreating to their own calculations about what just happened, and what it means for their position when the succession resolves. You walk back to your working chamber through the same geometric shadows you passed through 2 hours ago. The angle of the light has shifted. Everything else remains uncertain. Your assistant is waiting with the afternoon correspondence. 3 responses from provincial governors, all phrased in the same careful neutrality you used in your original letters. They're waiting for Constantinople to stabilize before committing to anything. Smart. That's what you do in their position. You draft responses that give them nothing new. Imperial administration continues. The succession process proceeds according to law and custom. Maintain current defensive postures. Report any unusual border activity immediately. The coffee has gone cold again. You drink it anyway. Your left eye twitches. You've been staring at maps and letters for too many hours without sleep. But your hands remain steady, and the letters keep moving. And somewhere in the military district, the Janissaries are receiving payment that proves the empire works even when everything should be collapsing. The evening call to prayer echoes across the city. You set down your stylus and listen. 5 times a day, the same rhythm, the same certainty. Everything else is negotiable. That sound is not. You'll sleep tonight, maybe 4 hours. Then back to the working chamber before dawn. Because Prince Bayezid is 3 days out now, and there are still 17 ways this could fail before he reaches the gate. But 8,000 swords just became less of a variable. That's worth the exhaustion. The lamp needs oil. You fill it, and return to the letters. The night work continues. The wax seals are piling up on the side table. Small red circles, each one stamped with the temporary authority you're using until a new sultan confirms the imperial seal. Your assistant sweeps them into a wooden box every hour. Evidence. Someday someone will count these and understand what happened in the week the empire had no center. 17 provinces held by a stack of boring letters and a functioning payment system. The treasury official arrives before the dawn call to prayer. He doesn't knock twice. You meet him in the smaller administrative chamber, the one without decorative tilework, just stone and ledgers and a single oil lamp that throws more shadow than light. The air smells like old parchment, and the particular anxiety of a man who has worked through the night on something that cannot fail. The payments are being distributed, he says in Ottoman Turkish. You set down your quill. Speed. Unprecedented. He produces a folded schedule from his sleeve. The ink is still slightly wet. Every unit by tomorrow. The schedule is clean. No errors, no delays. 8,000 Janissaries receiving their salaries in a 48-hour window that should take a week. You drafted the authorization orders with unusual urgency 3 days ago. The Treasury has somehow made it work. Excellent, you say. This secures everything. He nods once. The relief in his shoulders is visible even in lamplight. He has just executed the most important logistics operation of his career, and he knows it. Loyalty purchased at speed is loyalty that arrives when you need it most. He leaves. You return to the letters. The payments will reach the Janissary barracks by midday. The corps will receive their salaries ahead of schedule, which is rare enough to be notable. They will understand what this means. Prince Bayezid honors debts. Prince Bayezid controls the treasury. Prince Bayezid has the infrastructure of empire already moving in his favor. The Grand Vizier will hear about this within the hour. He will understand the significance immediately. A man who can move the imperial treasury this quickly is a man who has already won. He just hasn't been formally declared yet. You finish the provincial letter to Edirne. The phrasing is neutral, administrative. The kind of language that governors skim through while looking for the one sentence that actually matters. The one sentence is buried in the 3rd paragraph. Financial obligations to the military have been honored ahead of schedule. That sentence will be read 5 times. It will be understood perfectly. Outside, the dawn call begins. You fold the letter and reach for the next sheet of parchment. The list of remaining governors is shorter than it was yesterday. You're moving through them systematically, each letter calibrated to the recipient's position and the speed at which news travels in their region. The Janissary payments are the foundation. Everything else builds on top of it. If the court declares for Bayezid, the provincial governors will follow. If the governors follow, the border fortresses hold. If the fortresses hold, Prince Kem's claim becomes academic. You have not slept in 36 hours. Your hand is steady, the letters are clear. The treasury just gave you the strongest piece on the board. Now you move it into position, before anyone realizes the game is already over. The lamp burns lower, you trim the wick and continue writing. The wax on your writing table has gone cold. You press your thumb into it and feel the give, soft enough to take an impression, hard enough to hold its shape. The texture is oddly satisfying. It reminds you that physical things have physical properties, that the world operates on principles more reliable than human loyalty. You break the seal on a new stick of red wax and hold it over the flame. The smell changes the air. Beeswax and cinnabar, the scent of official correspondence. You've smelled it so many times in the past 3 days that it's become the smell of survival itself. The next letter is to Bursa. The governor there is old, cautious, a man who has outlasted 3 sultans by never choosing a side too early. You write the same neutral phrases, the same buried sentence. He will read it and make his calculation. The calculation will favor Bayezid, because the calculation will include the fact that you are writing to him at all. Your wrist aches. Not badly, just the dull, persistent reminder that you have been writing for hours in lamplight, that your body is still a body and bodies have limits. You flex your fingers and pick up the quill again. The Janissary Aga arrives at the council chamber exactly at noon. The doors are already open. The Grand Vizier is standing near the eastern window, hands behind his back, looking at nothing in particular. You are seated at the council table. The morning's letters are stacked and sealed. Everything that needed to happen before this moment has already happened. The Aga crosses the threshold. He does not sit. He positions himself at the center of the room where everyone can see him clearly, and he speaks. The court declares for Prince Bayezid, he says formally in Ottoman Turkish. The Grand Vizier turns from the window. His expression is perfectly measured. The face of a man who has just heard exactly what he expected to hear, and is choosing to look unsurprised. The empire is grateful, you say. The Grand Vizier steps forward. A wise decision. The Aga's face does not change, but something shifts in the set of his shoulders. A fractional relaxation. The declaration is made. The hardest part is over. The payments were, he pauses, searching for the right word, persuasive. The Imperial Treasury has processed salary payments in record time. This is because you drafted orders with unusual urgency. The Janissaries are now declaring for Bayezid. The Grand Vizier nodded approval. He understands loyalty logistics. Loyalty deserves recognition, you say. The Aga inclines his head. The movement is minimal but deliberate. 8,000 swords have just chosen a side, and the man who commands them has delivered the news in person. This is not a letter, this is not a messenger. This is the Janissary Aga standing in the council chamber and saying the words out loud where they can never be unsaid. The Grand Vizier returns to his position near the window. His hands are no longer behind his back. They rest at his sides loose, the posture of a man whose primary survival calculation has just resolved in his favor. The formal declaration will be recorded, you say. The Aga nods once more and turns toward the door. He does not wait for dismissal. He has delivered what he came to deliver. The rest is administrative. The door closes behind him. The Grand Vizier looks at you across the council table. Neither of you speaks immediately. The weight that has been sitting in this room since the morning the Sultan died has just lifted. Not entirely, but enough. The provincial letters, the Grand Vizier says quietly. Not a question. Already sent. He exhales slowly. The sound is barely audible, but you catch it. Relief sounds different than fear. It moves through the body in the opposite direction. You stand and walk to the latticed window. Beyond the palace walls, Constantinople continues its usual rhythms. Market noise, cartwheels on stone, gulls over the Golden Horn. The city does not know what just happened in this room, but it will. News travels faster than official declarations. By sunset, every merchant and garrison commander within 10 miles will know the Janissaries have chosen. The Grand Vizier joins you at the window. He does not look at you directly. His gaze is fixed on the city below. "We have bought time," he says. "We have bought more than time." He considers this, then nods, once. The gesture is small but absolute. The afternoon light slants through the lattice, throwing geometric shadows across the council table. The room is warmer than it was this morning. You feel the difference in your chest, in the place where breath sits when you're waiting for something terrible to happen, and it doesn't. The Janissaries have declared. The Grand Vizier has witnessed it. The letters are already on their way to 17 governors, who will read between every line and understand exactly what the gaps mean. Prince Bayezid is 3 days from Constantinople. When he arrives, the hardest decisions will already be made. The Venetian ambassador requests an audience 2 hours after the Janissary declaration. The timing is not coincidental. You receive him in the diplomatic chamber, the one with the better carpets and the low table where gifts are traditionally displayed. He enters with the smooth grace of a man who has spent 30 years moving through foreign courts without making anyone nervous. He bows. You gesture toward the cushions. He sits. The succession is, he pauses, choosing his word with visible care, resolving well. The empire's strength is eternal, you say. His smile is warm and genuine and completely opaque. He has been in Constantinople for 6 years. He speaks Ottoman Turkish with a Venetian accent that somehow makes him sound more trustworthy. It is an impressive trick. Indeed. He adjusts his position slightly, settling into the cushion. Our reports will reflect stability. The phrase is carefully constructed. Our reports means Venice. Will reflect means he has not yet written them. Stability means he is offering you a gift. The gift of favorable intelligence reaching the Doge's council before rumors do. Your understanding is appreciated, you say. He inclines his head. The movement is graceful, practiced, the physical language of a man who has negotiated 100 minor treaties and knows exactly how much weight each gesture carries. Until we meet again, he says, and the smile reaches his eyes this time. He rises, you rise, the audience is over. He leaves through the southern corridor, the one that leads to the embassy quarter. His pace is unhurried, a man leaving a courtesy visit, nothing more. You return to the council chamber. The Grand Vizier is still there, reviewing the afternoon dispatches. The Venetian, he asks without looking up. Understands perfectly. The Grand Vizier sets down the dispatch he was reading. His reports will reflect stability. The Grand Vizier's expression does not change, but something in his posture shifts, a fractional easing. The Venetian ambassador's reports shape how Europe interprets Ottoman succession. If Venice tells the story as continuity rather than crisis, the other powers follow. It is remarkable how much depends on one man's choice of words in a letter that will take 3 weeks to reach its destination. He gathered intelligence, you say. It is not a question. Of course, the Grand Vizier picks up another dispatch, but he gathered the intelligence we wanted him to gather. This is the game. The Venetian ambassador asked careful questions. You gave careful answers. He smiled and offered reassurance. You accepted the reassurance and allowed him to believe he had successfully extracted information. What he actually extracted was the information you needed Venice to have. He will write his report tonight. It will describe the succession as orderly, Prince Bayezid as the clear heir, the Janissary declaration as expected and proper. The report will mention the Grand Vizier's steady hand and the administrative efficiency of the palace staff. It will not mention the whispered accusations of poison, because those whispers have been carefully kept away from diplomatic ears. The report will arrive in Venice in late June. The Doge will read it. The other ambassadors will receive their copies. The narrative will set. By the time Prince Bayezid enters Constantinople, Europe will already believe the succession was never in doubt. This is how empires survive, not through force alone. Through the careful management of what other powers believe about your stability. The Grand Vizier returns to his dispatches. You walk to the window. The city is settling into late afternoon. Shadows lengthening. Market crowds thinning. Somewhere beyond the palace walls, the Venetian ambassador is already composing the first lines of his report. You have given him a story. He will tell it well. That is what Venice pays him for. The succession is resolving. The word choice was his, but the truth behind it is yours. The outrider arrives during the mid-afternoon call to prayer. He doesn't dismount so much as fall from his horse. 3 days of hard riding, changing mounts at every post station between Amasya and Constantinople. His message is 4 words long. Prince Bayezid. 3 hours distant. You're in the smaller council room when the report comes. The Grand Vizier is seated across from you, going through the final provincial responses. 17 governors. 16 confirmations of loyalty. 1 silence from Karaman, which is Prince Kem's mother's home province, and therefore not a surprise but also not comfortable. The outrider's words hang in the air like smoke. 3 hours. The Grand Vizier sets down the letter he was reading. His hand is steady. We should prepare the reception. Yes. You stand. The motion feels strange. You've been sitting in various council chambers for what feels like 6 consecutive days, which is approximately accurate because it has been 6 consecutive days. Your back protests. Your knees make a sound that in a younger man would be concerning and in you is simply factual. The palace needs to look like an empire that never doubted itself. Which means, banners unfurled along the processional route, janissaries in formal formation, not the working garrison arrangement they've been using since the crisis started. The Grand Vizier in his full ceremonial robes, not the travel-stained working set he's been wearing since Mehmed's body was found. You, standing in the correct position at the correct moment, performing the imperial continuity that prevents civil wars. It's theater. Expensive, necessary theater, where the audience is 8,000 armed men who will believe the performance, or they won't, and if they don't, the next 3 months will be extremely complicated, and probably fatal for most people currently in this room. Prince Bayezid is approaching Constantinople. This is good news. This is also terrifying until he actually arrives. Your letters have worked. The civil war you prevented exists only in alternative timelines. The protocol manual for receiving an arriving Sultan designate is 47 pages long, including footnotes about which ancestors amended which ceremonial details and why. You have read it twice. The Grand Vizier has it memorized. Neither of you will consult it during the actual reception, because appearing to need written instructions on how to perform Ottoman imperial continuity would defeat the entire purpose of performing Ottoman imperial continuity. The council chamber empties in organized haste. Officials scatter to their positions like birds from a tree. You move toward the outer courtyard, where the formal reception will take place. The sunlight is sharp and clean. It's been overcast for most of the crisis, which felt appropriate at the time and now feels like the weather was complicit in the general atmosphere of dread. Today the sky is clear. The Bosphorus is visible from the upper terrace, a line of blue that looks deceptively calm. You pass through the second courtyard. Janissaries are already forming ranks. Their uniforms have been cleaned. Their weapons have been polished. They look like an honor guard, not a powder keg, which is the intended effect, and also a sustained act of collective discipline that you do not take for granted. The Janissary Aga is standing near the gate, watching the formation settle into place. He sees you approach, nods once. The nod means, "We are ready." It also means, "We have committed. There is no walking this back." You nod in return. An official appears at your shoulder, young, nervous, carrying a writing case. The observer posts report movement on the northern road. Prince Bayezid's procession is visible from the outer walls. Distance. He will enter by sunset. The vanguard is already past the aqueduct. Prepare the reception. The official bows and retreats. You watch him go. He's 23, maybe 24. He wasn't born when Mehmed took Constantinople. To him, this is just the palace he works in, not the city that fell. The weight of history is not distributed evenly. The Grand Vizier appears beside you without sound, which is a skill he has perfected over 30 years of surviving Ottoman court politics. He's changed into his ceremonial robes. The gold thread catches the light. "We have succeeded," he says quietly. It's the first time he said it out loud. Not "we will succeed" or "we are succeeding," past tense, completed action. You look at him. His face is composed, but there's something in his eyes that wasn't there this morning. Relief, possibly. Or the first edge of belief that he might survive this after all. The Janissaries are ready, you ask. They are. The treasury payment was persuasive. And Prince Sem has not moved from Karaman. Our watchers report his household is quiet. Which means Kem is either planning something subtle, or he's accepted the reality that 8,000 Janissaries have already chosen, and he's not the choice. You hope it's the latter, you plan for the former. The sun moves lower, the light shifts from white to gold, you take your position near the ceremonial gate. The Grand Vizier stands 3 paces to your left. Court officials arrange themselves in order of precedence, which is a thing people care about deeply, even when the empire is 3 hours away from either stability or civil war. The air smells of dust and horse and something else, incense perhaps from the braziers that have been lit along the processional route. Someone decided the Sultan designate should arrive through perfumed smoke. It's excessive. It will probably work. You wait. The procession appears first as dust on the northern road, then as movement, then as distinct shapes, horses, riders, banners catching the wind. Prince Bayezid rides at the center of the column. You can't see his face yet from this distance, but you can see the way he sits his horse, calm, unhurried. A man who knows he's already won, and is simply arriving to collect the empire he inherited. The vanguard reaches the outer gate. The procession slows, reforms into ceremonial order. Banners are raised higher. The Janissaries along the route snap to attention in a single coordinated motion that looks effortless and represents hours of drill. Prince Bayezid enters Constantinople. The gates swing open. The sound echoes across the courtyard. Iron on stone, the physical fact of arrival. He rides through slowly, acknowledging the formations on either side. His expression is composed. He looks like a man who has spent 3 days preparing for this exact moment, and has no intention of wasting it. He dismounts in the center of the courtyard. An attendant takes his horse. He turns toward you and the Grand Vizier. You bow. The Grand Vizier bows. The entire courtyard bows in a wave that moves from the center outward. Prince Bayezid, Sultan Bayezid now, though the formal enthronement is still 3 days away, returns the gesture with the exact degree of acknowledgement that protocol requires. Not warmth, not coldness, simply the recognition of services rendered and positions held. The succession is secure, the Grand Vizier says formally. It is, Bayezid replies, thanks to careful management. He looks at you when he says it, direct, acknowledging. You meet his eyes and nod once. The courtyard holds its breath for one more beat. Then Bayezid turns toward the inner palace, and the moment breaks. Officials move. Attendants rush forward. The choreography of imperial transition begins in earnest. You step back, letting the flow of bodies and protocol carry the scene forward without you. The crisis is over. You've succeeded. You're still standing. The formal enthronement takes place 3 days later in the audience hall. By then, the crisis has already dissolved into administrative detail. Letters confirming the succession, diplomatic envoys updating their reports, provincial governors sending congratulations that sound genuine because they are, now that the outcome is clear and they're on the winning side. You attend the ceremony in your formal position. The Grand Vizier stands near the throne, looking like a man who has aged 5 years in 1 week, and knows he got off lightly. The Janissary Aga is present but silent, his work complete. He tilts his head once during the oath-taking, a gesture so slight that only 3 people in the room notice it, and all 3 of them exhale quietly. Sultan Bayezid II receives the oath of loyalty from the assembled officials. His voice is steady. His hands don't shake when he accepts the sword of state. He looks every inch the legitimate heir, which he is, and the only candidate who could have taken the throne without bloodshed, which is almost true but not quite. Prince Chem's name is not mentioned during the ceremony. He remains in Karaman. Watchers report he's accepted a provincial governorship, which is a polite way of saying he's been exiled to Anatolia with enough money and status to keep him quiet. Whether it works long-term is a question for future years. For now, it's enough. The audience hall is heavy with incense and late-morning heat. The tall windows let in light but not air. You can feel sweat gathering beneath your formal robes, the layers of silk and brocade that mark your position. Around you, other officials shift minutely, caught in the same arithmetic of discomfort and duty. The ceremony concludes as the call to evening prayer sounds across the city. The officials disperse slowly, moving through the palace corridors with the careful relief of people who have just survived something they're not allowed to name. You find yourself walking back to your quarters alone. The marble floors are cool underfoot. The evening light slants through the latticed windows in geometric patterns. Somewhere deeper in the palace, preparations for the formal banquet are underway. Musicians tuning instruments, cooks adjusting final dishes, servants arranging cushions in the reception hall, according to the strict order of precedence that Ottoman protocol demands. You won't attend. Your work is finished. The new sultan has been seated. The Janissaries have declared. The governors have sworn loyalty. What happens next is statecraft, not crisis management. And statecraft has officials whose entire function is appearing at banquets and saying the correct things to the correct people. Your quarters are exactly as you left them this morning. The cardamom coffee has gone cold in its cup. The maps are still spread across the table, marked with the courier routes you spent 6 days optimizing. 47 letters sent. 16 responses received before the decision became inevitable. 1 silence from Karaman that resolved itself when Bayezid entered Constantinople, and Cem stayed where he was. You sit down slowly, your back protests the movement. 6 days of council meetings and strategic calculations have left you with the kind of exhaustion that settles into the bones and stays there. Outside your window, the courtyard gardens are empty. The fountain at the center runs continuously, its sound a constant whisper against stone. You've heard it for years without truly noticing. Now it registers, the small persistent fact of water moving, indifferent to empire. The Grand Vizier appears in the doorway. He doesn't knock. At this point, formality would be absurd. The Sultan has entered his city, he says. The words are formal, but his tone isn't. It's the voice of a man stating a fact he wasn't certain would happen. The succession is complete, you reply. He steps inside, closing the door behind him. The sound is soft but final. Whatever is said in this room will stay here. We have survived, he says quietly. Through careful management. He almost smiles. Almost. The expression doesn't quite reach his face, But it's there in the way his shoulders settle, the first genuine relaxation you've seen from him since Mehmed's body was found. The letters to the governors, he says, masterful ambiguity. Not one of them could quote you as favoring either prince, but all of them knew which way to lean. They knew because the Janissaries declared first. The letters just gave them permission to notice. Even so, you both fall silent. Outside, the call to prayer continues, the muezzin's voice carrying across the domes and minarets of Constantinople. The city Mehmed took 30 years ago. The city that just passed to his son without a single sword drawn in anger within its walls. The evening light deepens. Through the window you can see the first lamps being lit in the palace gardens. Small points of warmth against gathering dusk. The Grand Vizier moves toward the door, then pauses. Prince Kem, he could still... He won't, you say, not now. The moment passed when Bayezid entered the city, and the Janissaries stood down. Cem is a poet, he knows when the verse has ended. The Grand Vizier nods slowly. I hope you're right. So do I. He leaves without further comment. The door closes. You're alone again. The maps on the table look different now. 3 days ago they were instruments of survival, courier routes and garrison positions, and the careful geometry of keeping an empire stable while its throne sat empty. Now they're just maps, parchment and ink, historical documents of a crisis that didn't happen. You pour fresh coffee from the pot that's been sitting on the brazier. It's still warm. The cardamom smell fills the small room, familiar and grounding. The first sip is bitter, then sweet, then neither, just warm and present. Through the window you can see the lights beginning to appear across the city. Constantinople at twilight. The Bosphorus is a dark line between Europe and Asia. Ships move slowly in the strait, their lanterns tiny points of light against the water. Somewhere in the palace, Sultan Bayezid II is receiving his first formal reports as ruler. The Venetian ambassador is probably composing his dispatch to the Doge, explaining how the succession resolved itself with admirable stability. The Janissary Aga is ensuring the payment schedule remains honored, because trust is a function of consistency, and 8,000 armed men have long memories. Your part in all of this is complete. The crisis came and passed. The empire continues. No civil war, no succession struggle, no bloodshed in the marble corridors where Mehmed once walked. You sip the coffee slowly. It's exactly the right temperature. The exhaustion in your bones doesn't fade, but it settles into something manageable, something you can carry. The night deepens outside. The palace grows quieter. You remain at the table, watching the city lights multiply across the darkness, marking the continuation of something that almost ended. The air cools. You feel it through the open lattice, the temperature dropping degree by degree as night settles over the city. The silk of your formal robes, oppressive during the ceremony, becomes merely present. Fabric against skin. The ordinary sensation of being clothed. You set down the empty coffee cup. The maps can wait until morning. The careful accounting of what was prevented, what was achieved, what remains to be watched, all of it can wait. For now, you sit in the quiet of your quarters and feel the empire breathe around you, stable, continuous, passing from one sultan to the next, without the fracture that seemed inevitable 6 days ago. The succession is secured. Your duty is fulfilled. The rest is simply night, and rest, and the slow return to ordinary time. You retreat to your private chambers an hour before midnight. The formal banquet is still underway in the reception hall. You can hear the distant sound of music, muted by stone and distance. The musicians are good. The court has spared no expense in celebrating the new sultan's accession, which is appropriate, and also a strategic performance of imperial stability for every foreign envoy currently watching. Your chambers are small and quiet. A single window overlooks the inner courtyard. The lattice screens filter the moonlight into geometric shadows across the floor. You light one lamp, no more. The extra light feels unnecessary. The cardamom coffee sits cold on the low table. You've been drinking it for 6 days straight. 47 cups by your private count. The number helped during the worst moments. The Janissary Aga's meaningful silences. The Grand Vizier's increasingly desperate calculations disguised as calm observation. The 17 letters to provincial governors that had to convey certainty while revealing nothing. You don't pour another cup. The crisis is over. The habit can end. The whispers that filled the palace corridors for 6 days, poison, faction, civil war imminent, have faded into celebration. The palace is breathing differently now. Easier. The corridors that carried urgent footsteps and hushed speculation are quiet again, returned to their ordinary rhythm of administrative footfall and routine passage. You sit on the cushions near the window. Your body protests the movement. 6 days of tension held in the shoulders and lower back. The physical cost of appearing calm while calculating survival odds in real time. The cushions are silk, filled with wool that's been carefully carded. Expensive. Comfortable. A small luxury in a palace full of them. Through the window the inner courtyard is empty. The marble reflects moonlight, pale and even. The fountain at the center continues its quiet work, water moving from basin to basin in the darkness. You can hear it from here, a sound so constant it becomes silence. You think about the corridor where you first heard the news. 40 minutes after Mehmed died, standing between your quarters and the council chamber, and the whisper reached you before the official announcement. The marble carried it to 6 people at once. That was the moment the crisis began. Not when Mehmed's heart stopped. When the knowledge escaped into the air and became something people could act on. From whisper to resolution in 6 days. A succession that could have torn the empire apart, settled through letters and strategic silence, and one carefully timed treasury payment to 8,000 men whose loyalty was the only thing that mattered. The lamp flame wavers slightly. There's a draft from somewhere, though you can't identify the source. The palace is full of small movements like that. Air currents through corridors, distant doors closing, the building breathing around you. The air smells different now. During the crisis, everything carried the sharp edge of tension, sweat and ink, and the metallic taste of fear poorly hidden. Tonight, it's just stone and lamp oil, and the faint residue of incense from the evening prayers. Ordinary scents. Palace scents. The smell of a place, returning to itself. You should sleep. The exhaustion is real and deep, but your mind is still moving through the details, checking for loose threads. Prince Kem in Karaman. Stable for now, but a future problem if he decides poetry isn't enough compensation for losing a throne. The Venetian ambassador's final report. You'll never know exactly what he wrote, but the fact that he departed with a smile suggests you gave him the story of a smooth succession rather than a near catastrophe. The Grand Vizier's survival calculations. He chose correctly by remaining carefully non-committal until the very end, and he knows it, and that knowledge will shape how he serves Bayezid. All threads accounted for, all risks managed. The crisis has passed. The palace is settling into its new rhythm. Tomorrow, the administrative machinery of empire will resume its normal function. Provincial reports will arrive and be reviewed. Trade delegations will seek audience. The Janissaries will return to their usual garrison duties. Their moment of leverage concluded until the next succession crisis in 30 or 40 years. You will return to your usual function as well. The administrative work that keeps an empire running beneath the surface of grand ceremonies and diplomatic receptions. It's quieter work, less dramatic, the kind of work where success means nothing visible happens. You prefer it. The music from the banquet hall fades. Either the celebration is winding down, or you've stopped noticing it. The night is deep and still. Constantinople sleeps around you, the city that changed hands 3 decades ago, and just survived changing hands again, without bloodshed. Through the lattice you can see a few scattered lights across the palace grounds, night watchmen making their rounds, kitchen fires being banked for the evening. The ordinary maintenance of a place this large, continuing regardless of succession or crisis, or the exhaustion of one official who spent 6 days preventing civil war. You extinguish the lamp. The moonlight through the lattice is enough to see by. The shadows pattern the floor in familiar shapes, geometry you've lived with for years, the architecture of a space that's become home. The cushions are soft beneath you. The exhaustion settles deeper, no longer something to fight against, but something to accept. Your breathing slows. The tension in your shoulders begins to release, degree by careful degree. The marble corridors are silent, the whispers have stopped. The crisis that defined 6 days of your life has dissolved into memory and official record. The succession is secure, the empire continues. You close your eyes and let the darkness hold you, the weight of survival giving way at last to the weight of rest. You step into the smaller reception room adjacent to your private quarters. The silk cushions along the eastern wall are waiting in their usual arrangement. Indigo and ivory stacked in pairs, positioned to catch the late afternoon light through the narrow window. The air here is different from the council chamber. No marble amplifying every breath. No latticed shadows marking time across anxious faces. Just the faint sweetness of rosewater from the copper basin in the corner, and the softer sound your footsteps make on carpeted stone instead of bare floor. The call to prayer begins from the mosque beyond the palace walls. The muezzin's voice carries across the rooftops, that long ascending note that marks the late afternoon. Somewhere in the courtyards below, the Janissary Corps is standing in formation for evening devotions. 8,000 men who made a declaration 3 days ago that prevented a civil war. 8,000 men, whose payment schedule you personally expedited through channels that will never appear in any official ledger. You lower yourself onto the cushions. The silk gives slightly under your weight, then holds. Your spine settles against the wall. For the first time in 11 days, the act of sitting does not come with the immediate mental calculation of how soon you will need to stand again and where you will need to go. The Grand Vizier Karamani Mehmed Pasha is in his own quarters now, 3 corridors away. The Venetian ambassador departed this morning through the southern gate, with letters that will reach Venice in 19 days. And will describe an orderly succession secured through institutional stability and the wisdom of careful governance. Which is true. What the letters will not mention is the midnight conversation in the smaller council room, or the treasury speed that turned institutional stability from aspiration into fact. Prince Bayezid entered Constantinople yesterday at noon. The formal enthronement is scheduled for tomorrow. The empire has a sultan, not a succession crisis. Not a civil war, a sultan. You close your eyes. The muezzin's call continues, that familiar melodic pattern you have heard thousands of times. But which sounds different today, because today you are hearing it while sitting still, with no dispatch to write and no courier waiting, and no careful phrasing required to communicate a position without stating it directly. The cushions hold your weight. The rosewater scent drifts from the copper basin. The call to prayer fades into the distance as the muezzin reaches the final line. Outside the palace continues, servants moving through corridors, guards changing shifts, scribes recording the daily events in the language of official history, which is always simpler and cleaner than the version you lived through. But that is happening elsewhere. In other rooms. Beyond these walls. Here, in this smaller reception room with its indigo cushions and narrow window, the crisis is over. The tension that has lived in your shoulders for 11 days is beginning to recognize this fact. Not quickly, not all at once, but beginning. The light through the window shifts slightly as the sun drops toward the western hills. The afternoon is ending, the evening is coming. And for the first time since the whisper in the marble corridor 40 minutes after dawn 11 days ago, you are sitting still, and you do not need to move. The silk beneath your hands is smooth and cool. The wall against your back is solid. The air smells faintly of roses and something else. The particular stillness of a room where no one is calculating survival. You breathe in. You breathe out. The call to prayer has ended. The palace is quiet in that specific way that means the day's public business is concluded, and the evening's private routines are beginning. Sweet relief is not a dramatic feeling. It does not announce itself. It arrives quietly, in a smaller reception room, in the form of silk cushions that hold your weight, and a window that shows you the sky without requiring you to interpret it for strategic implications. The copper basin holds the rosewater in absolute stillness. No ripple, no movement. Just the faint surface reflection of the window's light, that pale square floating in the water like something you could reach into and touch. The scent reaches you in waves that follow no pattern you can predict. Sometimes stronger. Sometimes barely present. The room breathing its own rhythm. Your left hand rests on the cushion beside you. The silk threads catch slightly on your smallest finger, where the skin is rough from 11 days of holding reed pens. The texture is there, present, real, not something you need to analyze or respond to, just sensation without requirement. The Muezzin's voice has faded completely now. What remains is the city beyond the palace walls. Distant, layered, the sound of Constantinople settling into evening, cartwheels on cobblestones somewhere far off, a vendor's call that reaches you as rhythm without words, the movement of thousands of lives that continued through the crisis without knowing they were living through history. You sit, the light fades, the relief continues. The small brass tray sits on the low table beside the cushions. 1 cup. Still warm. The cardamom scent rises in that familiar bittersweet combination you have been breathing for 11 days straight. The cardamom coffee has been your constant companion. 47 cups across this crisis. You have counted. The counting helped during the Janissary Aga's most meaningful silences. This cup, the 48th, is different because you do not need it. The Grand Vizier is not arriving in 20 minutes. The courier is not waiting. The dispatch does not require 3 more drafts to achieve the correct balance between clarity and careful ambiguity. This cup is optional. You are drinking it because the ritual is comforting, not because staying awake is a survival requirement. The first cup was before dawn on the day the whisper reached you in the marble corridor. The second was during the emergency council meeting, when 17 officials were attempting to appear useful without committing to a position. The seventh was at midnight when you realized the provincial governors' letters would need to go out simultaneously to prevent any one region from gaining informational advantage. The 19th was during the second meeting with the Janissary Aga, the one where he said nothing for 6 full minutes, and you learned that his head angle could communicate approval, threat, or patient waiting, depending on a difference of perhaps 3 degrees. The 33rd cup was when the Treasury official confirmed that the payment schedule had been accelerated, and the Janissary Corps would receive their salary ahead of the usual date. Not as a bribe, as institutional reliability. The distinction matters in ways that never appear in official histories, but which determine whether an empire gets a succession or a bloodbath. You lift the cup. The coffee is still hot enough to require careful sips. The cardamom hits first, then the bitterness underneath. Your hands are steady. They have been steady for 11 days, because showing a tremor in the council chamber is an excellent way to communicate weakness. And weakness during a succession crisis is the kind of communication that gets you removed from all future conversations. Permanently. The window shows evening sky, deep blue, not quite dark. The palace torches are being lit in the courtyards below. Small points of flame appearing one by one as the lamplighters make their rounds. It is a routine that continued through the entire crisis because palace routines do not stop for succession questions. The torches were lit every evening. The guards changed shifts. The kitchens prepared meals. The empire continued to function on the surface while underneath, in council chambers and smaller reception rooms and midnight conversations that never happened officially, the actual work of preventing civil war was taking place. You set the cup down, it makes a small sound against the brass tray, not loud, just present. The Venetian ambassador is 3 days gone. His dispatch pouch contained letters describing institutional stability and orderly governance. What it did not contain was any mention of how close the alternative had been. The ambassador is a professional. He understands that some information shapes the future, and some information simply records what everyone will pretend happened. The letters he carries will arrive in Venice, and the Doge will read about an empire that transitioned smoothly from Mehmed the Conqueror to his legitimate heir Bayezid, supported by loyal institutions and careful administration. Which is true, it is just not complete. The coffee is cooling now, you can drink it faster. The cardamom scent is fading into the general evening smell of the palace. Torch smoke and cooking fires, and the faint salt smell that comes off the Bosphorus when the wind shifts north. 48 cups. You will not need a 49th tonight. The crisis that required constant wakefulness and careful phrasing and strategic silence has ended. Prince Bayezid is Sultan Bayezid now. The Janissaries have declared their support. The provincial governors have received their letters. The Venetian ambassador is carrying the version of events that Europe will believe. And you are sitting in a smaller reception room drinking coffee that you do not need, counting cups because the counting itself has become a way of marking time. A way of measuring what you survived. The brass tray holds the empty cup in its circular depression, fitted precisely to prevent tipping. Someone in the palace workshops made this tray. Measured the cup, hammered the depression to match. That craftsman's work has served you 48 times now. The small steadiness of objects made well. Made to last. Made to hold things that matter during moments when hands need to stay occupied while minds calculate survival. The cup's interior still shows a thin dark residue along the porcelain. The cardamom grounds have settled at the bottom, in a pattern that might mean something if you believed in coffee fortune-telling. You do not. But the pattern is there anyway. Swirled, settled, done. The last light fades from the window. The palace torches are all lit now. The evening call to prayer will come soon. And after that, the night. The actual night. Not the working nights of the past 11 days, where midnight meant another dispatch, and dawn meant another council meeting. Just night. Sleep. Rest. You finish the coffee. The cup is empty. The brass tray reflects the dim light from the corridor outside. Somewhere in the palace, the official histories are being written. The records that will say succession was orderly and governance was stable and the empire continued without interruption. You were there. You know what orderly looked like from the inside. But that knowledge is private. That knowledge lives in the count of 48 coffee cups, and the memory of the Janissary Aga's head angles, and the midnight conversation in the smaller council room that never officially occurred. The cushions are soft beneath you, the coffee warmth is fading, the crisis is over. You are allowed to rest now. The treasury orders came through on the 8th day. You remember this not because of the date but because of what happened immediately after. The treasury official arrived before dawn with the confirmation document. The kind of paper that looks bureaucratic and boring, and which actually represents 8,000 swords pointed in the correct direction instead of at each other. The order was simple: accelerate the Janissary salary payment by 17 days. not as an emergency measure, as institutional reliability. The distinction matters because emergency measures communicate panic, and panic during a succession crisis is contagious. But institutional reliability, that communicates strength, that communicates an empire, that functions, regardless of which prince sits on the throne, because the empire itself is larger than any individual reign. The Grand Vizier signed the authorization, you witnessed it. The treasury official departed with the document before the first call to prayer. By midday, the payment was moving through the system. By evening, the Janissary Aga knew. You could tell because he arrived at the council chamber the next morning with a different posture. Not relaxed. The Janissary Aga does not do relaxed, but certain. Decided. 8,000 swords secured. Not bought. Secured. The Janissaries were not waiting to see which prince offered more gold. They were waiting to see which prince represented stability, which succession would not require them to choose sides in a civil war that would turn Constantinople into a battlefield, and the empire into a fractured collection of provinces picking their own favorites. The payment schedule answered that question. It said, this empire has a functioning treasury. This empire pays its debts on time. This empire is not in crisis, it is in transition, and transitions, when managed correctly, do not require bloodshed. Prince Kem never knew how close he came. Not to winning. To forcing the question into open conflict. His claim was legitimate enough to argue. His support was real enough to matter. But the Janissary declaration ended the argument before it required swords to settle it. And the Janissary declaration came 3 days after the accelerated payment cleared. Cause and effect. Treasury speed translating directly into political stability. You are lying against the silk cushions now. The evening has deepened into night. The palace is quiet in that particular way. That means most of the day's business is concluded. And the people still awake are either guards on duty, or scribes finishing records, or individuals like yourself, who are remembering how the crisis was actually won. The official histories will not mention the treasury timing. They will say Sultan Bayezid's claim was supported by institutional consensus and military loyalty. Both true. What they will not say is that institutional consensus was built through careful letter writing, and military loyalty was secured through accelerated payments that demonstrated the empire's financial stability during a vulnerable transition. You remember the treasury official's face when he delivered the confirmation. Relief. Pure, unprofessional relief. He knew what the document represented. He knew that 17 days of accelerated processing meant the difference between an orderly succession and a potential civil war. He said nothing. Just handed you the paper, waited for the witness signature and left. Professional discretion is the foundation of empire. The things that prevent collapse are often the things that never appear in any official record. A payment schedule. A carefully timed letter. A midnight conversation that technically never occurred. These are the mechanisms that keep 8,000 swords in their sheaths, and prevent beautiful younger brothers with dangerous claims from becoming the spark that burns Constantinople. Prince Cem is in Bursa now, alive, unharmed. His claim still legitimate, but no longer actively threatening, because the question has been answered, without requiring him to test it through force. This is the best outcome. Not for Cem personally. He wanted the throne. But for the empire. Civil wars are expensive in ways that go beyond gold. They are expensive in ways that take generations to repair. The cushions hold your weight. The night air coming through the narrow window is cool but not cold. Spring, in Constantinople. The city is settling into evening routines. Taverns filling. Families finishing meals. Guards walking their routes. All the ordinary life of a city that does not know how close it came to becoming a battlefield. You know. The Grand Vizier knows. The Janissary Aga knows. The treasury official knows. And the Venetian ambassador knows. though the letters he carries will carefully omit that knowledge in favor of the simpler story that Europe prefers. 8,000 swords. Secured through institutional reliability. Through a payment schedule that arrived 17 days early and communicated strength instead of panic. The Treasury victory, never recorded, never celebrated, never mentioned in any document that will survive into history. But real. Decisive. The single action that turned a potential civil war into an orderly succession. You close your eyes. The memory sits quietly in the darkness behind your eyelids. Not dramatic, not glorious, just effective. The night air carries the salt smell from the Bosphorus now. Faint, clean. The scent of water that has traveled from the Black Sea, through the Strait, and into the Sea of Marmara. Water that has moved through empires and trade routes, and the long history of this city that sits between continents. The smell reaches you through the narrow window, present without announcement. The same smell that was here 11 days ago when the crisis began. The same smell that will be here tomorrow when Sultan Bayezid's formal enthronement takes place. Constantinople continues. The water continues. The night continues. Your breathing has slowed without you noticing when it happened. In, out. The rhythm of a body that no longer needs to stay alert for the next courier, the next emergency, the next careful sentence that must communicate 3 things simultaneously while appearing to say only one. The crisis is over. The Treasury official is back to his normal routines. The Janissaries are paid and loyal. Prince Bayezid is Sultan. And you are resting against silk cushions in a smaller reception room, remembering the boring, bureaucratic victory that saved an empire. The night is fully dark now. The palace torches provide the only light. Somewhere distant, a dog barks once and falls silent. The Bosphorus moves beyond the walls with that constant, gentle sound of water that never stops. You breathe in, you breathe out. The silk is soft. The crisis is over. The coffee cups are counted. The Treasury victory is remembered. And finally, after 11 days of careful calculation and strategic silence, and midnight conversations that never officially happened, you are allowed to simply rest. The Grand Vizier Karamani Mehmed Pasha enters the private council room after the formal enthronement ceremonies conclude. He moves with the same measured grace he maintained throughout the crisis. But something in his posture has shifted. The weight he carried for 9 days has lifted, and what remains is the recognition that his survival calculations resolved correctly. He chose correctly by remaining carefully non-committal. His measured tones concealed genius. You have learned to recognize survival strategy disguised as indecision. The transition proceeded smoothly, he says, settling onto the cushions across from you. His voice carries the same controlled cadence it always does, but the underlying tension has dissolved. The provincial governors have sent their acknowledgements. The Janissary Corps received their bonuses. The Venetian dispatch left this morning with language that will reassure the Signoria. You pour cardamom coffee from the brass pot. The ritual feels different now, optional rather than necessary, a gesture of hospitality rather than survival fuel. The cup passes between you without urgency. Your letters shaped the outcome, he continues, the timing of the treasury disbursement, the coordination with the Janissary Aga, the management of the Venetian ambassador's expectations. He pauses, and for the first time since Mehmed's death, the pause is not a calculation. These were not the actions of a clerk recording events. These were the actions of someone ensuring a specific outcome. The acknowledgement sits in the air between you. In 9 days of crisis, neither of you spoke directly about which prince you favored, or what actions you were taking to support that preference. Every conversation was conducted in the language of administrative procedure and neutral observation. Only now, with Bayezid enthroned and the succession secure, can the underlying strategy be named. The empire required stability, you say. The phrase is neutral enough to survive any future examination of the records, but in this room, with this man, it carries the full weight of everything you both did to ensure Bayezid's victory. The Grand Vizier nods once. It did, and it received it. He drinks his coffee slowly, savoring it in a way that was impossible during the crisis. The speed of your correspondence with the border commanders, the precision of your language to the provincial governors, the way you ensured the Janissary payment arrived ahead of schedule, each action appeared routine in isolation, but the cumulative effect shaped the political landscape before Prince Cem could establish his claim. You remember the midnight planning sessions, the careful phrasing of each letter, the strategic timing of each dispatch. Every decision carried the risk of premature commitment. If you acted too obviously in Bayezid's favor before the outcome was certain, you became a target for whichever prince ultimately won. But acting too late meant failing to shape the outcome at all. You faced the same calculation, you observe. Every council meeting was a performance. Neutral language concealing decisive action. Yes, the word carries a weight of exhausted relief. I have spent 9 days maintaining the appearance of impartiality, while ensuring a specific result. The strain of that performance was... He pauses, searching for language that captures the experience. Considerable. The afternoon light slants through the latticed windows, warm and golden. Outside, Constantinople continues its daily rhythm. Merchants in the bazaar, ships in the harbor, the call to prayer marking the passage of hours. The crisis that consumed 9 days has dissolved into the normal operation of empire. The question of poison, you say quietly. The Grand Vizier's expression doesn't change. Will remain a question. Officially the Sultan died of natural causes. Unofficially speculation will continue for years. But with the succession secured and no civil war, the question becomes historically irrelevant. The empire survived the transition. That is what matters. He's right. In the immediate aftermath of Mehmed's death, the possibility of poison felt urgent. A threat that needed investigation. A crime that demanded justice. But 9 days later, with Bayezid enthroned and the government functioning smoothly, pursuing the question would only destabilize what you fought to preserve. Some truths are less important than the stability they threaten. The coffee cup is warm in your hands. The Grand Vizier sits across from you in companionable silence. 2 men who survived a crisis through careful calculation and strategic non-commitment. His genius was in recognizing that appearing indecisive was itself a form of decisive action. By refusing to commit publicly to either prince, he maintained the flexibility to shape events without becoming a target. You learned that watching him, the way he spoke in ellipses and observations rather than declarations, the way he asked questions instead of giving answers. Every measured tone was a survival strategy. Every careful phrase a form of protective camouflage. And it worked. The treasury official, the Grand Vizier says after a long silence, mentioned your efficiency during the crisis. The speed with which financial obligations were processed, the precision of the documentation. He meets your eyes. He was impressed. The acknowledgement is oblique but clear. Your work during the crisis has been noticed at the highest levels of government. In the Ottoman court, that recognition is both reward and burden. You have proven your competence, which means you will be trusted with more complex responsibilities in the future. The empire required speed, you say, using the same neutral phrasing that carried you through the crisis. It did. The Grand Vizier rises, moving with the ease of a man no longer calculating survival odds with every gesture. And it will require the same in the future. Rest now. You've earned it. He leaves through the private entrance and you are alone in the quiet room. The afternoon light pools on the cushions. The coffee pot sits on the brass tray, still half full. Outside, the distant sounds of the city drift through the latticed windows. Voices in the bazaar, the creak of cartwheels on cobblestones, the rhythmic calls of street vendors. The crisis is over. The Grand Vizier survived by concealing genius beneath measured tones. You survived by shaping events while appearing to merely record them. And the empire survived because enough people made the right calculations at the right time. The cushions receive your weight as you settle back. The warmth of the afternoon sun reaches through the windows. For the first time in 9 days, you feel the deep exhaustion that comes after sustained crisis. Your body registers the absence of threat, and the adrenaline that kept you moving finally begins to drain away. The brass tray reflects light in soft, amber tones. The taste of cardamom lingers faintly on your tongue. The air carries the distant scent of orange blossoms from the palace gardens, the sweetness that was always present but impossible to notice during the days of crisis. Now it reaches you clearly, marking the ordinary world returning. The Janissary Aga's head angle at the final council meeting returns to you now in the quiet of your chamber. His silence throughout the crisis was its own language. 8,000 swords waited on his interpretation of events. The left tilt of his head during the emergency council meant conditional evaluation. The straight-ahead gaze when he entered at noon on the 9th day meant decision made. His single sentence, "The core supports the legitimate succession," required 9 days of silence to precede it. You learned to read the angle of his head as precisely as any written dispatch. The slight shift of weight from left foot to right indicated consideration of new information. The way he positioned himself relative to the Grand Vizier revealed unspoken alliance. Every military commander in the room watched him for signals. The provincial governors' letters referenced his anticipated response. Even the Venetian ambassador's careful questions circled the uncertainty of Janissary loyalty. And through it all, the Aga maintained the strategic silence of a man who understood that his words carried the weight of 8,000 armed men. The memory of his declaration at noon dissolves into the warmth of the afternoon. His voice was steady and certain when he finally spoke. The room released 9 days of held breath in that moment. You remember the sound of quills resuming their scratch across parchment after he finished. The Grand Vizier's shoulders dropped a fraction of an inch, the only visible sign of relief. Outside your window now, the call to prayer drifts across the rooftops. The muezzin's voice carries the same certainty the Aga's did. Both are declarations that shape the world through their utterance. The cushions beneath you hold your weight without resistance. The Janissary Aga's silence was mastery. His speech, when it came, was precision. The empire turned on the axis of his decision, and he chose correctly. That choice now recedes into the fabric of history. Your eyelids grow heavy, with the weight of 9 sleepless nights resolved. The afternoon light softens as clouds drift across the sun. The memory of his head angle, straight ahead, decision made, is the last clear image before your thoughts begin to scatter. 8,000 swords remained sheathed. The city remained whole. The empire continued. The brass edge of the window frame glows where sunlight touches it. The coolness of marble beneath your hand feels distant now, a sensation noticed but not requiring response. His silence was an architecture that held space for possibility. The room grows quieter as evening approaches. The Venetian ambassador's final audience returns to you in fragments. He arrived with Murano glass wrapped in silk, blue-green transparency catching afternoon light through latticed windows. His questions were sympathetic intelligence gathering disguised as diplomatic courtesy. The transition proceeds smoothly, I trust. Each word carefully weighted to extract information while offering none. You remember the way he moved through the chaos with perfect diplomatic grace. His reports to Venice would shape European response to the succession. Every detail he observed would travel across the Mediterranean in encrypted cipher. The gift of Murano glass was itself a message. Venice values this relationship. Venice brings beauty to the transaction. Venice expects reciprocal consideration. You gave him language that was true without being complete. The succession has been secured. The government functions normally. Prince Bayezid has received the loyalty oaths of the military and administrative leadership. He smiled and inclined his head in acknowledgement. What he left unsaid was more important than what he spoke. No mention of the 9-day uncertainty. No reference to the poison speculation. No acknowledgement of the careful calculations that prevented civil war. His discretion was professional appreciation of your own. Two diplomats sharing the understanding that some truths are protected through careful words, rather than outright deception. The glass sits now on the table beside your cushions, blue-green transparency holding afternoon light. Its beauty is foreign and strange. Venice feels impossibly distant, another world where different rules govern succession and power. But the ambassador's careful dance through Ottoman crisis revealed the underlying similarity. Every court protects its secrets. Every diplomat weighs words for maximum advantage. Every intelligence gatherer conceals their true purpose beneath the performance of sympathy. You close your eyes and the memory of his departure dissolves. The silk wrapping. The inclined head. The measured footsteps retreating down marble corridors. His reports are already traveling west across trade routes you cannot intercept. But the language he carries is controlled. Stability, continuity, orderly succession. The crisis contained and resolved. The glass catches light one final time as your thoughts drift toward darkness. Beauty and intelligence intertwined. The Venetian dance complete. The coolness of glass under your fingertips, smooth and impossibly thin. The weight of it so slight it barely registers. The blue-green color deepens as the sun descends. 17 provincial letters dispatched over 3 days, each one carrying the same message in different words. The Sultan has passed. The succession proceeds according to law. Imperial governance continues without interruption. You remember sealing the last one as the evening call to prayer began, the wax pooling red against white parchment. Your hands steady, because steadiness was the only option available. The cushions beneath you hold the shape your body has pressed into them over the course of this week. Silk that has absorbed the weight of crisis management. The fabric cool against your palms when you first sat. Warm now. Body heat transferred slowly over hours of stillness. Somewhere beyond these walls those letters are being read. Governors opening dispatch pouches in provincial capitals. The words reaching them days after the event they describe. News traveling at the speed of horses and favorable wind. But the words themselves, those you shaped with precision, strength conveyed while chaos reigned inside these palace walls. Authority projected across distances that would have revealed any crack in the imperial fiction. The faction that wanted civil war received 17 identical messages. There is no opening here. The governors who might have considered independence received the same answer before they finished forming the question. You shaped the empire's voice while the empire was deciding whether it still had one. The small brass lamp on the low table has burned down to its final measure of oil, the flame smaller now, steadier, the wick drawing from the last reserve. Your shoulders have released something you didn't realize they were holding, not all at once, gradually. The way a fist unclenches when the danger has passed, and the body finally believes it. The marble of the walls holds the day's accumulated warmth, releasing it slowly into the cooler air of evening. A gentle thermal exchange that requires no effort, no decision, just the physics of stone and temperature. In 3 days those letters will have reached every corner of the empire that matters. the response will come back in the form of silence. Governors who could have rebelled, choosing instead to send congratulations to the new sultan. Silence as confirmation. Silence as the sound of an empire deciding to remain whole. The call to prayer has ended. The muezzin's voice faded into the distance some time ago. You're not sure when. Time has softened at the edges, minutes no longer carrying the sharp precision they held during the crisis days. The cushions receive more of your weight. The silk cool again, where your hand has shifted position. Small movements. Nothing urgent. The body settling into rest the way water finds level. Somewhere in the palace the Grand Vizier is also resting. The Janissary Aga has returned to his barracks. The Venetian ambassador is 3 days gone, sailing west with carefully chosen words in his diplomatic pouch. And you wrote 17 letters that held an empire together while princes calculated their odds and soldiers waited to see which way to point their swords. The lamp flame wavers once, holds, the oil nearly gone now. Soon it will gutter out, and the room will know only the ambient light from the corridor, the soft glow that never quite disappears in Topkapi, even at the darkest hours. Your breathing has slowed without you noticing, deep, even, the rhythm of a body that has carried crisis and set it down. The air carries the faint scent of jasmine from the gardens below, night-blooming flowers opening in the darkness, their fragrance drifting through the latticed window on the evening breeze, sweet without being cloying, present without demanding attention. The letters are sent, the empire held, the succession secured, rest earned. The call to prayer drifts across the Golden Horn. Distant, layered. Multiple mosques calling the faithful at slightly different moments, the voices overlapping in a way that sounds like harmony, but is really just geography, and the speed of sound across water. You hear it from your chambers, the latticed window open to the night air, cool against your face, the breeze carrying the scent of the city, bread baking in the pre-dawn darkness, smoke from countless household fires, the salt edge of the sea. Constantinople at peace. The city that has known so many conquerors, so many transitions of power, settling into this one without bloodshed. Without the screams that could have echoed through these streets, if the succession had fractured differently. The cushions beneath you have taken your shape completely now, the silk no longer cool, body temperature. The boundary between fabric and skin softened by hours of contact. Your eyes half closed. Not sleeping yet, not quite. The place between waking and rest, where the mind still tracks sounds but no longer organizes them into meaning. The calls to prayer are just voices now. Beautiful, requiring nothing from you. The Golden Horn lies dark beyond the palace walls. You cannot see it from here, but you know its shape. The curve of water that made this city defensible, the harbor that brought trade and wealth, and the attention of empires. Mehmed took this city 30 years ago, broke the walls that it held for 1,000 years, made Constantinople into the Ottoman capital, and himself into the man who would be remembered as conqueror. And now he is gone, the succession past, his son crowned, the empire continuing. The voices fade, the final words of the call carried away on the wind. Silence returning, not empty, full. The silence of a crisis resolved, of tension released, of a city breathing easily, because the alternative did not come to pass. Your hand rests against the cushion beside you, fingers uncurled, the palm open, no letters to seal, no urgent dispatches to review, no whispered conferences in rooms without windows. Just this. The cool air, the distant water, the city at peace. The lamp has gone out. You didn't notice when. The room lit now only by the ambient glow from the corridor, soft, warm, the kind of light that asks nothing. Somewhere in the palace, the night watch makes its rounds. Footsteps in distant corridors. The quiet efficiency of a household that functions even when its masters sleep. You are not yet asleep, but close. The boundary thinning. The body sinking into rest the way the city has sunk into its own calm. Gradual, inevitable, sweet. The breeze shifts, cooler now, carrying the first hint of morning though dawn is still hours away. The temperature dropping in that way it does in the deepest part of night. The world contracting, gathering itself before the next day begins. But that is later. That is a problem for the body that will wake, the mind that will resume its duties. Right now, just this, the cushions, the breeze, the darkness that is not frightening but gentle, merciful. The crisis past, the letters sent. Constantinople peaceful under its new sultan. Sweet relief settling into your bones, finally. Earned through days of precision, and nights of calculation, and the sheer grinding effort of holding an empire together, while it decided whether to tear itself apart. It chose to remain whole. You helped it make that choice. Now, rest, deep, deserved. The kind that comes only after survival. The Golden Horn lies dark and still. The city breathes. You breathe with it. Sleep approaching, patient, kind. Waiting for you to stop resisting, and simply let go. The silk cushions receive the full weight now, no tension remaining. The body has released everything it was holding. 7 days. 7 days of crisis management, where every word mattered, and every silence carried meaning. Where the wrong phrase in a letter could have sparked rebellion. Where hesitation could have been read as weakness, and weakness as invitation. Over now. The cushions remember the shape of that week. The hours of sitting. The weight of decision pressed into silk and stuffing. They hold you differently now. Not the rigid posture of crisis. The soft collapse of survival. Your breathing has become the only sound you track. In, out, slow, even. The rhythm of a body that has done what it needed to do and can finally stop. The room has no edges anymore. The walls still there but distant, unimportant. The darkness complete but not oppressive. Just the absence of things that require attention. No letters, no dispatch riders. No whispered conferences where every word is weighed for loyalty and every pause examined for hidden meaning. The Grand Vizier somewhere in his own chambers, the Janissary Aga in his quarters near the barracks, the new Sultan in the imperial apartments, all of them resting, all of them released from the same calculus you carried. The silk cool where your hand has moved, warm where your body presses, small sensations, nothing urgent. The world reduced to texture and temperature, and the steady rhythm of breath. You succeeded. That is the thought that surfaces as the boundary between waking and sleep grows thinner. Not pride, just acknowledgement. The empire could have fractured. It didn't. You were part of that. A small part in a much larger machine, but present, functional, effective when effectiveness mattered most. The cushions hold you. The darkness surrounds you. The palace sleeps. Tomorrow will come. Governance will resume. The ordinary crises that make up imperial administration. But those are for the person who wakes. Not for this moment. Not for this dissolving. The silk beneath your cheek. The cool air on your face. The weight of your own body sinking into rest. Nothing required. Nothing demanded. Just this slow descent into sleep. Earned. Deserved. Finally, mercifully given. The week of intrigue concluded. The succession secured. The letters sent and received and acted upon. Your part done. Your duty fulfilled. Rest waiting. The cushions receive everything. The darkness holds everything. Sleep approaching on soft feet. Let go. The crisis manager sleeps. Breath slow. Body still. The silk cushions holding the shape that no longer holds itself. Somewhere in the palace, dawn approaches. Not yet, but coming. The sky beginning its long fade from black to grey to gold. But here, only darkness, only the steady rhythm of breathing. The body surrendered completely to rest. The succession secured. Bayezid crowned 3 days ago in the audience hall, the Janissaries paid, the provinces informed. The Venetian ambassador sailing west with words that will shape how Europe understands what happened in Constantinople in May of 1481. All of it done. All of it resolved. The empire stable, the crisis past. And you, sleeping now, deeply, the sleep that comes only after survival, after precision under pressure. After 7 days of managing chaos while projecting calm. The cushions beneath you, the cool air on your face, the palace breathing around you in the darkness. The faint scent of lamp oil, long extinguished, the silk, body warm, the night air through the lattice carrying the distant salt of the Golden Horn. Nothing required anymore, nothing demanded, just this perfect stillness, this absolute rest. The crisis manager sleeps, the empire sleeps. Constantinople sleeps under its new sultan. Merciful, complete, earned. All of it sleeping now.